People who get locked into a vision. All right, that's it, man. That's their drive. That's their passion. Critics don't matter. This don't matter. They're going to do whatever it fucking takes to be the best at what they do.
This is Dave Tate again with another edition of Table Talk. Today I am with Zach Thayer, who just started as an intern with us last night. So we asked him to throw together some questions because we had to push this podcast up a little sooner than normal. So we didn't have time to do a shout out for questions. So I'm going to be answering his questions. I also printed off a list of older questions that we never had a chance to get to be able to go from as well to cover that. So I guess from there, we'll just start right with the questions and go with explaining what Zach's doing, and kind of give you a little bit of a background on him. So those who are watching, who are in the same position, can kind of better relate, to where you're at in your education career, if it's a career, education career, and so forth. So you told me last night you're 22, correct?
21.
21,
yeah.
Close.
Yeah.
Okay. So 21, and you're a marketing major.
Yep. And
you're out here wanting to learn, increase your skill set in digital media, podcasting, video, so forth. I haven't had that much time to really speak to what you're
right. Yeah, I'm still kind of new.
What your roles are going to be. I mean, it was kind of thrown on me last night that hey Dave, here's Zach. He's a new intern, and it's like, okay, fuck it, let's work up and max him out, see what he can squat. So that's kind of one of the things that you guys are going to see is last night I did ask him if he trained, which sometimes we get interns that train, sometimes we get interns that don't. It just depends upon what the skill set is that we're trying to help them with, or that we need help with, vice versa. It's kind of a two-way street with interns. And so we get to teach you really cool stuff, and you get to do really shitty work. So it's kind of how it works. But when there's, to me, it's cool when they train and they have a training background, because then, I can teach more relevant stuff, which is, it's relevant to our industry, that we're in, but it's not really relevant to being a better editor or being a better marketer or so forth. But I think it all does kind of relate to, training relates to everything in life except one part of training, which is ego, which doesn't relate real well. But I wrote a whole book on that, and a lot of the whole philosophy behind the company is, everything that you can learn in the gym or in sport at high level carries over to life, business, career, and so forth. So you're in your what year?
Technically fourth year.
You're in your fourth year?
Yeah.
Did you change majors?
Yes, quite a few times.
Okay. All right, so what's the path?
So I started out, I went to a college called Milligan College in East Tennessee on a track scholarship. I was a thrower. And so I spent a year there as just a general business major. I didn't have the focus of marketing or anything like that. And then after that, some family stuff came up. My sister has some health problems, and I wasn't happy with the coach there. And so it didn't feel like the right spot for me. So I came back and I spent a semester at Columbus State. And there I actually switched to accounting, because I took one accounting class and thought it was the best thing in the world. So logically, completely change your life over it. And then I went to Ohio Wesleyan for a semester, throwing there. And there was a lot of things that just didn't add up to me there. So I decided to go back to Columbus State and save some money. And at Ohio Wesleyan, I was a general business major again. And each college they all had different general education things. So I ended up doing a lot of general education and not many actual major classes. And so now I'm back at Columbus State, and I've been there for a year and a half, just trying to figure out what I'm supposed to do and how I'm going to do it. Yeah.
Don't feel bad that it's taken you a long time, to get through. It took me 7 years to get a bachelor's degree.
Yeah.
For different reasons. I wasn't really transferring around. I had a hard time taking I averaged 2 courses at a time. And then the summer courses, I take, one summer course each. It was divided throughout the summer because they were fucking so easy to take. Well, you had to go every day, which makes it really hard. You know, you don't really have to study if you're going every day.
Right.
So it's kind of really easy to kind of get through those. And I changed my major several times. So it was business for a while. Then I flunked out. And then to make a long story short, I didn't want to flunk out again. You know, I wanted to get my GPA up because I was at Bowling Green at the time. And I wanted to get the fuck out of Bowling Green. That's all I wanted to do. But I was afraid to take the classes I failed. Because you fail them again, you're not going back to any college ever. So I avoided them until I got my GPA up enough to transfer. During that time, I selected my courses by walking through the bookstore and looking at the books that looked either the easiest to take or the most interesting.
Yeah.
And after 3.5 years of doing that, my girlfriend, wife at the time, or girlfriend then wife now, asked me, "Don't you have enough credit hours to graduate?" And I did. And I'm like, well, fuck. I wonder what I could graduate with. So I went to every college on campus, and I was one class away from a sociology degree. And then said, fuck, I don't want it. So I transferred, started over to exercise science and nutrition at Toledo. But there's two takeaways here the reason I'm telling the story again for those people that have already heard it several times is I had a great guidance counselor at Toledo, which is really rare at a college level of any sort. They suck, you know, and I didn't have in high school I didn't have it, but the one in Toledo was really, really good. And the first thing she told me was, you have to retake these courses that you failed. And I'm like, oh man. And they're like, take it at, I think it was Owens Tech at the time, which was a tech school. She said, just take them there. It's going to be a smaller class size. You'll be fine. One of the courses I failed was microeconomics. And, going to class helps. So I need to put out there, I didn't go to class. You know, I got the syllabus, knew the test dates, and tried to cram before, take the test, and failed. So that's largely why I failed out. Ended up acing it. But not only that, but when I was taking it, it's like, this shit is not that hard. And it's actually really fucking interesting. I had an instructor I couldn't understand. The course was 200 kids, 200 people. So it's like, okay, fine, I'm ready to take the other one, which I think was statistics or something that was a little harder. And it was like, okay, so anyhow, I got those out and graduated. But so the key thing is, just because you fail a course, if somebody's in the position like I was, instead of taking what I thought was the logical route, don't take those classes. Start back over with a 0.75 GPA, and you can't transfer unless it's a 2.5 or something like that.
Yeah.
Only take classes you're going to be good at, or that you're going to like. It takes forever. Just find a different teacher, even if you got to sit through the class 3 or 4 times. Like now, if I could go back, I would have signed up for, if they would have allowed me, 3 microeconomics classes for the same semester with 3 different professors, and then just drop the ones that I didn't like the professors or the classroom was too big, because that shit matters.
Yeah.
And it would have expedited my graduation by probably 2 years, because I wouldn't have been I learned a lot from the classes that I was taking, but it cost me personally, because I worked my way through college. It cost me a lot of money, to pay for those courses. And the the class size, I'll just use class size, matters.
Oh yeah.
Big time.
Yeah.
So that's the first thing. The other thing is, sometimes it might take 7 years. Sometimes it might take fucking 8 years, but you got to wonder, are you in deep enough that it's worth pursuing, or is it time just to say fuck it and get out and go a different route? You see what I'm saying? So it's, you got to look at the credit hours, see how long. I mean, you're in a weird spot where that would involve a longer conversation than I want to have on a podcast.
Right.
To be able to say, because the you're not on scholarship anymore.
No.
All right. So now it's costing you.
Yeah.
So that's the overreaching problem with college educations nowadays, is the cost compared to what you're going to make in the industry. You may be paying off student debt for the rest of your life. But anyhow, for those listening, some people are going to finish in 3 years. Some people are going to come in with, a year already done because of college preparatory classes. Some people might only take 2.5 years. Some people might take your normal 4.5. Some people might take 6. You can't compare yourself to other people.
Right.
You can only compare yourself to what you have to be able to do and what you get done, because none of those other people are going to fucking matter after you graduate, unless they're going to be the ones hiring you, then.
Yeah. And that's a process that I definitely had to go through of just being okay with where I'm at and where I'm going, and understanding that it's okay if it takes a little bit longer, and that's just how it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's not, you can pick up skills, what I'm saying? You can pick up job skills along the way. I was a gym I was a gym manager for most of my college education. And we really didn't have personal trainers, so there was no formalized personal training. It's just you trained the people who were members of the gym. And I was a bouncer, so I held 2 or 3 jobs at one time. The bills were being paid by bouncing, not being the gym manager. But the gym manager was building a resume, I suppose, because I've always been around training and powerlifting, bodybuilding, and that stuff. And I loved doing it. And it was easy, especially during the day, because nobody was in there. So I could do my homework, I could, do my homework and all the other kind of shit.
Yeah, a lot of freedom.
While I'm sitting there, and it's not doing your homework on somebody else's dime, because essentially you're just at that point security for the gym to make sure nobody comes in there and rips anything off, because nobody's coming in. Then when they do, you gotta, do whatever you gotta do from that standpoint. But as long as you're doing internships and you're working and you're building the resume, I can say as an employer for 21 years I've had Elite FTS. And before that, I was an employer I was a manager, but I was part of the hiring process for 8 years at the club I worked there, and probably another 2, I'd say for 35 years, I've been part of the interviewing and hiring process, more so with Elite FTS, obviously.
Right.
Because it matters more, than before. If I fucked up before, it was somebody else's mess to clean up. I can personally say the last thing that I look at is the education. Especially today. 10 years ago, that's probably different. But I was looking at it for a different reason. Because if they had a master's or some shit like that, I couldn't afford it. So it's they're out, And, but that was also, I should say that ended up being a false assumption that I found after a period of time as well. But that's the last thing I look at. The first thing I look at is the work history. I want to know the work history. And then the second thing I look at is how long were they at each job? Because if they're bouncing around from job to job to job, and it's every year, and it's a different job, well, fuck, what makes me think you're going to be here longer than 1 year?
Right.
If that person is hired, then it's under the assumption they're going to be here for a year, and the whole time they're here, I'm going to be working on trying to find who their replacement is. But that would still be better than a gap.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Having a year gap, because everything
just
could be
doing anything.
Yes, because you can explain it.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? You can say, look, I was here, and here. Because I was in college, I was moving around. But you typically. No, I don't want to say that. I was going to say typically you can assume that the employer is looking at what city and state each one of these jobs were in.
Yeah.
But as somebody going out that will be interviewing, don't assume anything of the person that's looking at the resume. Don't even assume that they even looked at it, because they could look down and say, you know, hey, it looks like you've had 8 jobs over the past 2 years, and they don't see that it was 8 different cities.
Right.
Until you point it out, and then you're in a weird spot, you know, because
That's a long explanation.
well, you want the job, right?
Yeah.
And you don't want to say, hey, dude, fuck, you didn't even look at the cities. You know, why should I work for you? You're an idiot. You don't pay attention to detail. You know, obviously, you're not going to.
Right. I'm not going to say that.
You're not going to say that, but those things like that sometimes get overlooked. So that's a decent conversation right there, just for those entering the job market. Why did you decide on? And I like the fact that you said accounting, because one of the questions I get asked from a business perspective, everybody wants to know what 5 books or what 10 books they should read. It's every AMA I do every Friday night on Instagram. And before that, I had a Q&A that was on our site. It was like a weekly fucking question. You know, and I've written several articles. You know, by the time you write the article and you put it out, then you look at your list, you're like, fuck, that's not really that good of a list. And it took me a while to figure out why the list I was putting out were never that good. And it's because I read a lot of trade books. You know, I used to call them Barnes and Noble's books, but I guess Amazon books.
Yeah.
You know? And I got a shit ton of Kindle books, a ton of them. But most of it's skim reading for me at this point. It's like, I've already read this. Okay, this is interesting. No, it's stupid. I read this. And there are some good trade books that are out there, but nothing compares to a textbook. So you've taken Accounting 101, right? So you know the difference between, you know, an asset and a liability.
Right, yeah.
You know what a profit and loss statement is.
Yeah.
You know how many fucking business owners I sit down with that I ask them for their P&L and they don't even know what the fuck I'm talking about. They have no idea. And, you know, if you're one of those guys, get your fucking shit together. You have to know your numbers. You have to kind of know where people stand. I will give them a little bit of slack, a little bit, on a balance sheet, only because it's slightly more complicated to actually follow and figure out. But the P&L, for Christ's sake, even I'm going to go on a rant. I'm going to try not to, but I mean, even a complete moron can read through there and kind of figure out if they know the difference between. But because you've taken that, you kind of know where to put things, which makes a difference. You know, it makes a difference from a couple standpoints. From if you decide to go your own way, you know, the entrepreneurship route, which may be one of your questions, or if you try to go the employer way, it's going to give you a way better understanding of the overall business, because most, I don't want to say most, almost half of all employees assume that if a company comes out and says we did, you know, $1 million in sales last year, most employees think that the company made $1 million. You know, they don't understand cost of goods. They don't understand their own salary comes out of that. It's like, where do you think this?
It just magically appears.
But because you took that accounting class, that helps. And I'm not telling people to take accounting courses. Now, if you're in school and you have an elective, yes, fucking take an accounting course and take a finance course. That will do you more for the rest of your life than any course you could take in college, because you're not going to end up in deep credit card debt and all this other kind of shit, because you're going to have, I'm not going to say you're not going to. If you do, you're going to do it intentionally.
Yeah, you're going to be much more aware of what you're doing.
Yes, knowing exactly what you're doing. But when people ask me what books, they're always textbooks. I'm like, you can buy used college textbooks super cheap. And I don't know the website off the top of my head. I'd have to look it up. Maybe somebody can post it in the comments. There's a couple websites where you can get used college textbooks for free. You know, so if you're own your own business, and I mean, textbooks are not cheap. If you go to Amazon and try to buy a textbook new, and you will fucking shit. You know, I about shit. because that's my main source, you know, and now you got social media. So there's social media courses being taught. It's like, okay, I'm going to go, you know, how much is it? And they're not used because they're new, you know,
Right,
it's like
yeah.
how much, and you don't want used because the new one's already going to be 3 years out of date. Fucking $500. I'm like, you out of your mind.
Yeah.
$500 fucking dollars. So you guys are getting fucked so hard. It's ridiculous. But used, that's where I send people first, because if you wanted to learn more about training, and I'll relate it back to training a little bit, if you don't know what a set and a rep is, then you don't know how to even do a training session.
Yeah.
You know, so if you don't know, you know, the difference between an asset and a liability, that's like not knowing what a set and a rep is if you're trying to run a business, you know, or you get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so that segued really nice into me just running my mouth as I normally do on what books, you know, people should read, because once they cover those and they cover marketing, I mean, the 4 Ps, I mean, that's kind of like everybody should know that.
Yeah.
It's, if they don't know that, then they're not even around business, because usually that's a joke that people make of business. Like
Yeah.
PPs and
Mentioned
you know.
constantly.
Yeah,
so,
I mean, it's and but nobody ever talks about it in detail, which is where it's like, okay, I get this. Let's talk about promotion a little bit. Oh shit, you know what I'm saying? Now the conversation dies.
Right.
It's like, you want to make fun of the marketing people. Let's talk about promotions and how well they return, and you know how you know to put them together.
Right.
And then, oh, I know product and price. You know, well, shit. You know, that's kind of easy.
Yeah.
You know,
those are usually pretty simple equations.
Yeah. The
promotion has a lot more. There's a lot of nuances in that.
Yeah.
But not saying that product and price are easy, but
Yeah.
like relatively.
Well,
you know.
9 out of 10 products are going to be reverse engineered.
Yeah.
With some kind of tweak to it to either make it better or cheaper, right? 1 out of 10 is going to be something that might be kind of new, but doubtful, you know, just old, just brought back to market. So product's kind of easy. Price, somebody selling something similar. So it's kind of determined by the market.
Right.
You know, so, you know, place, well, fuck, you know, if you have a warehouse in the middle of London, Ohio, you're kind of, but now the place changes because you go online. Now is place SEO? Is SEO, you know, a part of place, or is it part of promotion? You know, interesting conversations that can be had.
The
you know,
weeds of it.
Yes.
But, yeah.
And that's where the textbooks can help. You know, and then leadership, I think, gets missed. I think the sooner people can start reading about leadership, the better, because it's the hardest skill, and I think it's the skill that's never mastered. Because everybody that's ever said they mastered it, I think they're full of shit. You know, you can master it for one demographic for one period of time, which might win you a Super Bowl, or might, you know, put you over the top for, you know, whatever business objective you have. But then the players change. You know, they move on. They, you know, and now you got a whole nother demographic. And so what has to change? You know, the leadership has to, you can't continue to use the same style of leadership that was used 10 years ago. Hell, imagine if everybody was trying to run companies today like they did 40 years ago.
Wouldn't go well.
No, there'd be a lot of fucking people in jail.
Yeah.
All right, so from that, I'll let you go into whatever questions you had.
Okay. So, I mean, we can kind of stick on the whole business side. And so, like, I'm just wondering, like, out of all the things that you've kind of learned throughout running Elite FTS and going through this whole process, what's, like, the hardest thing that you've ever gone through in terms of business? Like, was there a period where things were dicey? Was there...
Oh, yeah, there's
was
always...
there any, like, product tragedies or anything like that where just something doesn't add up, or...
Yeah. I mean, that's a yearly thing.
Yeah,
you know,
and I think that would be
a
consistent thing.
I think people need to understand that, you know, that is, and we're small to mid-size, and I'm sure it doesn't change with the larger business. The only thing that changes as a larger business is the managers underneath take care of it, and with the small business, it's everybody. You know, one person taking care of pretty much everything.
Yeah,
but I would say I can sum up all of them if it's from, you know, legal issues, albeit copyright, trademark, patent, product liability, dismissal without cause, which, I mean, Ohio's an at-will state, so it's, you know, and a lot of one thing with this, if you have a business, you need to know what your insurance does and does not cover. All right. And then you have to be very, very cautious of those things that the insurance does not cover. Because is it a fight you really want to go down? Is it a fight you want to get into? Because if it involves any type of legal work, it's going to cost you out the ass, and you're never going to, even if you are in the right going after somebody else, you're never going to get what you pay, you know, for
it's not a winning battle regardless.
The lawyers win,
right?
You know, which they hate, you know, they hate for me to say, but it's the truth. So it's what, I guess from that standpoint is you have to first, there's a couple lessons. The first thing is you have to determine, is this really a problem? Okay, like, and things work faster today than they did 15 years ago. So you have to make that decision faster. You know, it's, man, before social media, you had a news cycle of, you know, a newspaper, right? Or a monthly magazine. That was kind of your news cycle. So if something really fucked up happened, you had enough time to, okay, we can think about this, we can stew, we can see what's going to happen. Now that news cycle's gone. You know, it's spinning, and it's spinning fast. So you might be able to catch your breath for maybe a day, you know, and if it's really, really serious, you might not even have that. But before any of that, you have to stop and say, is this seriously a problem, and how am I looking at this? Am I looking at this with emotion, or am I looking at this as somebody who runs a business? You know, so you have to kind of take yourself out of your body and then look back at it like, okay, if this wasn't me, right, and somebody called me that's a friend of mine and gave me this exact same scenario, what advice would I give? All right, usually that's going to be different than what you're thinking. Okay. And sometimes it's not a problem. It's just an emotional problem for you at that time. So the worst thing that you can do is run your mouth. And then you made something that's not a problem into a problem, which really didn't have to be, where all you had to do was just shut up. So that's determine if it's a problem. And then determine if it's a problem that actually needs to be solved. Okay, some problems are just lessons in disguise. Like, okay, this is a problem. You know, something's broke here in the supply chain, or something's broke with personnel, or, you know, whatever it is. Is this just somebody having a bad day that tomorrow it's going to be cool? It's going to be over. Or is this, you know, the UPS terminal's fucked up, you know, so it's, you know, it's a real problem. And it needs fixed, it needs addressed. So once you figure that out, then how do you fix it? You know, what do you learn from it, and how do you fix it? And not how do you band-aid it. Sometimes it is like a flood, you know, coming in, where you just need to stop the water and get the water stopped, but you still got to get the water out. You know, that's there, and then make sure it doesn't happen again. That's the first. That would actually be the second lesson. All right. The first lesson above that is to control your own narrative. You know, it's false narrative is the way I explain it. The best way I can explain this to people who, if they've been through any type of legal issues, it's very easy to explain. If they've never been through a legal issue, it's not easy to explain. Or it's a different scenario. So everybody's had a significant other that they've broken up with and have been heartbroken about. At least most people. Right. Probably more people than have had legal issues. Okay. So usually what happens there is, you know, a week before the shit goes down, or even more so, and even after, you don't know what to say, and you're playing all these different scenarios in your head. Like, oh man, what if he says this, or what if she says that? Well, if she says this, I'm going to say this, but she might say this, but if she says that, then I'm going to say this. And you just spend all your fucking time, you know, playing this, I call it false narrative, in your head over and over and over and over. And then you speak to that significant other and then you have a conversation. It was not one of the fucking things you played in your head, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so you spent 6 hours like stressing out over this issue, which when you spoke, you ended up fighting about something that wasn't even one of those issues. Okay, so you lost 6 hours of creativity, you lost 6 hours of work, you lost 6 hours of education, you lost 6 hours of your life fantasizing about something that wasn't going to happen.
Yeah.
All right, and then when you did have the conversation, something different happened, so you just start playing that stupid fucking, you start playing the record again, and it's just false. And then by the time it's all done, if you look through past relationships that you've been through, by the time you've gone from A to Z, and it's completely done, all the little fights are over with, all the stupid shit's over with, you know this, it's over, you know, the other party knows it's over, you're both moving on. And then you look back over that whole, from start to finish, not one of those things that you thought about played out true.
Yeah.
Not one.
Yeah.
So if you just would have not fucking played the narrative and just had the conversation, you know, reacted to the conversation, discussed the conversation, left the conversation with what you were to decide upon before the next conversation, and only that, you know, and then go into the next conversation. It's a fraction of the stress. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And you still can get all your training in, you can get all your work in, it's not sucking your creative freedom. When it's a business and you're running the business, or you're the manager of the business, or you're in charge of the business, or anything like that, and it's a legal issue, I mean, the first one's going to kick you in the nuts no matter what. So there's no, just like the first time you had a significant other break up with you. There's no, I mean, with my kids, there's no way around that. I can talk to them all I want. Say this is all bullshit. It's all false narrative. This isn't going to happen. It doesn't matter. The first time you're going to get kicked in the nuts.
Yeah.
You have to go through it. It's just part of life. You know, you just have to go through it. Then after it's over, then you can sit down and have that conversation. Say, man, look back on that. How much of that was really true? And if it connects, a lot of times people are like, fuck, a lot of it. And then hopefully the next time they get involved in a situation like that, half of it will go away. It's not all going to miraculously go away.
Right.
But if it's enough to where the person can at least tell themselves, stop. What the fuck am I doing?
Yeah.
I got other shit I got to get done. You know, let's table this. Okay, now when it's a business, and let's say it's legal issues, or it could be staff issues, it could be drama, it could be, you know, anything that's not addressed that plays that false narrative. The reason I use legal issues is because lawyers like to work on 7-day, you know, time frames. It's like, okay, we're going to write this letter. Okay, I have this problem. So I call the attorney and then we discuss the problem. That's productive, right?
Yeah.
It's costly, but it's productive. So for 2 hours or whatever, an hour usually, we're doing a deep dive into the problem, and then they're going to do the discovery and they're going to get back to me. Now they're doing the discovery, right? There's no reason for me to get on Google and spend fucking 12 hours doing discovery. I'm not going to find something that they don't find.
Right. That's why we're paying them.
Yes, unless they really, really suck.
Yeah.
Okay, but everybody does. All right, the same way they do medical conditions. That's why doctors will tell you don't go online, don't Google. You know, where
Right.
sometimes I disagree with that, because from a medical condition you have to be able to ask better questions, and even from a legal position, you should do a little bit of research so you can ask better questions.
Yeah. But I mean, going on to WebMD and searching.
Yeah, you don't
being
want to
like,
try
I have a cough and it's saying you're dying tomorrow. Like, that's
Yes.
that's obviously
No.
not.
no, you don't want to do that.
Right. Yeah.
You know, if you need a hip replacement, which
Yeah.
I've had, you know, then my doc, go search hip replacements. Here's
Right.
where I want you to go. And then when I come back, I have a hell of a lot more questions.
Yeah.
Okay, that now we're having a real discussion. That's not like, well, is it going to be, can I squat, you know, can I squat and deadlift and, you know, all this stuff I really want to know. Now it's more about, well, what should it be made of? You know, we want to do this, we want to do this, this is experimental, so forth. But getting back to the legal stuff, because I see this probably a dozen times a year, people will call me that are in this position, and it sucks all their time. It just drains their time because they're doing their own discovery, and then they get back with the attorneys. Usually it's between first contact and second contact. It's not that long. It's a few days. And then they're going to say, okay, look, this is the direction that we decided to go. And you agree or you disagree. And if you agree, they're going to send a letter, certified, however it's going to be sent, and the other party needs to respond 7 days. At that point in time, it should be like, fuck yeah, vacation time, 7 days. I don't have to think about it. What happens is people go stir fucking crazy, and they keep doing a deep dive, and they're like, what if they say this? What if they do this? What if they do that? It's the narrative again. Now in business, what happens becomes a little bit more critical, because all that time then that they should be working on new product development, new marketing campaigns, you know, the creative stuff that got them in the position to be sued in the first place, you know, to actually be a target.
Right.
Because nobody's going to target somebody that's not worthy of, you know, you're not going to go after somebody that you don't think has any money.
Yeah.
All right. Now, a lot of times they go after people and they find out later they didn't have any money, and they're the ones that end up being fucked. But all that time gets wasted. And let's say this goes on for a year. You can actually hold up your entire business growth for a year, all because of false narrative bullshit that when it's all said and done is not going to end up being anywhere near as bad as what you thought it was. You know, if you're on the negative end. If you're on the positive end, I can guarantee it's not going to be anywhere close to what you think it was going to be or what you hope it was going to be. You know, everybody's got a best case scenario. Yeah, I'm going to win $1 million fucking dollars. No, you're going to win about $4.50, you know, and about $500,000 of legal fees.
Yeah.
But where you really lost is that whole year of productivity and creativity that got sucked from you. All right. This is where bigger companies can suck dry smaller companies without having to actually compete with them in the marketplace. They just basically send lawsuits out to them to try to fuck up the mindset, you know, of the company or the person running the company. So the second part of that is to build big walls. You know, don't leave yourself open. You know, make sure that your risk management stuff's in sight. So the two learning lessons, and I like to give examples, you know, with the lessons so it has some context. Because I could have just said, make sure the problem's a real problem, all right, and don't create false narrative. And nobody's going to really understand the significance behind that.
Right.
You know,
they're much less likely to remember that.
Yeah, and if I put a story behind it, you're going to know.
Yeah, if I'm in a class and there's a bunch of bullet points, I'm not going to remember those bullet points, but if I have context to those bullet points, I'm going to remember them.
Or if
I'm a lot more likely. Yeah, like if there is a story, there's some type of narrative to it, or some understanding of, like you said, just how important it is.
Yeah, the professor gives you a whole story about his dog.
Right.
You know, and it covers 3 of the bullet points. You remember, hey, man, Shaggy.
You're sitting there taking the test, and you're like, oh, why am I thinking about my professor's dog?
Yeah, Shaggy the white dog. That's right there.
Yeah, right.
So, perfectly. Okay, what do you got next?
So I want to kind of go into something that I know that Joe Sullivan, he's talked about it a lot, kind of the mental health side of powerlifting and your thoughts on like the effect of powerlifting on mental health. And I mean, obviously a positive way. I think a lot of times it can be a stress reliever or something if used correctly, but I want to know kind of your thoughts on that.
In one way or another, I've been part of the sport since 82. So I think I even wrote that down. I believe that's like 37 years. And I've been a competitor in the sport. I've been a meet director in the sport. I've managed a gym. I guess you could say I kind of own a gym, but I don't really own a gym. I've trained at Westside Barbell for 14 years. So I've trained in one of the hardest core, if you want to use that word, environments for 12 to 14 years, somewhere around that time frame. And then before that, I trained with two world champions, George Crawford and Bob Wall, for a number of years. So a competitor at a national level, competitor at the IPA world. So I don't really want to say it's a world level, but a competitor, or a high ranked competitor for one of the years, as ranked in the top 1, 2, or 3. It depends. You got to search openpowerlifting.org. I think 97 or 98 where it fell. Those were my best competitive years, which happened to probably be around the same years that you were probably born. And then I served as a meet director. I was a judge for several different federations. I own a company that sponsors lifters. So outside of owning a federation, there's not one role in this sport that I haven't filled at one time or another. Mm-hmm. So I kind of know the sport, inside and out. And it's very similar to the Wizard of Oz, right? So you got Dorothy, right? Mm-hmm. Going down the yellow brick road to try to find her way home. So she's got her little slippers, like her fucking house gets smashed, and the witch dies, so she's got to make things, right. She's told if she goes to the castle to see the wizard, then the wizard's going to make everything right, and she's going to be able to go back home. And so she gets on the yellow brick road, and she starts going down this path. And as she's going down this path, there's different adversity she has to face, and then she meets, the Tin Man who doesn't have a heart, the lion that doesn't have courage, and the scarecrow that, I think that's the brain, doesn't have a brain, right? So different personalities that she meets going down this road, and they're all looking for the same thing. They're all trying to find their own truth, their own way back, to who they are. Mm-hmm. Essentially, metaphorically speaking. Then when they get there, right, they get to the palace, and they get to the wizard, and fucking pull back the curtain, and it's some dude with a megaphone, right? Yeah, it's bullshit.
Don't pay attention to the man behind the curtain.
Yes, you don't pay attention to the man behind the curtain. Powerlifting is the same way. If you're a competitor, don't go behind the curtain. The platform is the same, like where she started, like the whole theme of the movie, right? Mm-hmm. At the very end, click your heels twice, boom, she wakes up. It was just a dream. She's right back to where she was. Guess what? The lion has courage. The Tin Man has a brain. The scarecrow, I got that fucked up. The Tin Man has a heart. Right. The scarecrow now has a brain. They always had the brain. They were always in that place, right? That place is that fucking 8x8 platform that's got a squat rack, a bench, and a deadlift bar on it, right? Yeah. That's the sport of powerlifting. The journey that you take, a lot of people will take different journeys. There'll be different people. There'll be different, needs and wants behind that. Lead you to a place that could be greater, right? But it all ends up back to being the same fucking 8x8 platform with a chalk pool, weights, and a bar, right? Mm-hmm. Now, if you go down there and you look behind the curtain, then all of a sudden, if they would have woke up, right? Dorothy wakes up, and, oh no, it wasn't a dream. Now, all of a sudden, she's got this outlook that's fucked. It's like, fuck, this is a fucked up place here. This is really fucked up. Nothing's what it seems. Yeah. It's all fake. It's all fucking bullshit. Well, that's kind of powerlifting. A lot of it is fake and fucking bullshit. But don't look behind the curtain and you won't fucking know that. You know what I'm saying? You'll still go down the same road. You'll still have to beat the same adversity, and you're still going to find your way back home. You just don't have to go on that side, right? So when you're talking about personalities, right, and the mental health and all that kind of standpoint, that plays into this, right? Because some people don't give a fuck. They just want to go down the road. Yeah. And they just want to get stronger. Some people are cool, just staying in the gym, training the power lifts to train the power lifts. Other people want to go all the fucking way and have the all-time world record. And there's no way they're going to be able to go all that way and not get a glimpse behind the curtain. There's no way. So they have to have the mental fortitude to understand that this is what it is. And while it's a little fucked up, so are all sports. Actually, powerlifting is probably less corrupt than, I don't want to get in trouble with naming professional leagues, but most professional sport leagues is probably pales in comparison. All right. So when they have that in mind and they know what's off the trail, you know what I'm saying, what lies ahead and what's all a part of that, I think that eases the mental health aspect that the sport can create. Okay. Just the sport is an overreaching body, you know, coming back on a lifter, which most people, like I said, won't have to deal with. What they have to deal with are the things like injuries and stagnation, not making progress, and just bullshit drama that's in a gym, you know. And a lot of these things I've seen change over the years, where the gyms used to be more for camaraderie, because I personally feel because people were forced to train together. So there was pros and cons to multiply, single ply, and raw, right? So first off, the lifters determine where the sport going. So I'm not sitting here in any way saying that if the sport all went back to geared, it would fix the problem that I'm talking about. It wouldn't.
Right.
All right. The problem would still exist. But when you're in gear, you have to wear multiply gear. Usually that whole group is going to be training in the same monolift, in the same rack at the same time. All right. So they learn to rely and depend upon each other. You can circumvent that a little bit by having training times, and they're limited, you know, to, like, people here will train from 6:30 till, you know, who knows when, you know, whenever they're done. Some of them are longer than others. But just by having everybody in here at the same time, if they like each other or not, it's still building some degree of camaraderie, because over a period of time, the people that they dislike, they might learn to like a little bit. People that they really like, they might actually learn, you know what, I don't like this motherfucker. You know, so it kind of works both ways, you know, with that. Whereas I've seen that, what I've seen change over the years is, whereas when I first came into the sport, say like last night when they were all squatting, you know, pretty much every rack was used except for the one crappy one. When I came into the sport, only one would have been used. All right, so people would have been squatting, and then the other 3 or 4 people would have been spotting those 3. And then they would rotate, and then they would go do their accessories. Even if there were 10 racks or monoliths in the gym, that's just kind of how it worked. What happened with raw, which I think is a negative, you know, side effect. A lot of positive things happen with raw, so I don't want that to... I don't want it to go sideways or be taken out of context. They don't need them. Like you don't need, you just fucking squat. You just get in the rack, walk it out, and squat. Set the safety pins up. The benefit to that is, if they're really in a hurry, they can get in and out within 45 minutes or an hour. You know, if they're training alone, they might even be able to get their shit done faster than that. You know, so they're not in the gym, you know, for... Oh God, I mean, some of the bench shirt workouts were ridiculous. The best example I know how to give is I used to train legs with John Meadows on Saturday, and they were intense, long, high volume training sessions that might last fucking 3.5 hours. You know, we had the intra nutritional product, and he was using it for muscle building. I was using it because I needed to fucking eat. I needed calories. Yeah. We would be all the way done with our training, like 45 sets or some stupid shit, and they would still be putting their shirts on. Like, they'd still be benching after all that time. And that was kind of the normal, where if you bench raw, fuck, you're in and out in 10 minutes. It depends upon how much warming up you need to do. So that has an impact on the camaraderie, the social interaction is less than what it used to be. Okay. And that's just a comparison to 20 years ago to now, which is kind of meaningless. The reason I'm putting it out there is a lot of the guys my age or older, even a little bit younger, like to always go back and make that same discussion that I just did, but don't understand it's not going to come back that way, you know, and no matter what they think,
Yeah.
it may or may not have been better, but it's not going to change. You know what I'm saying? It's just, and I can give you tons of reasons why that was bad, you know, because your waiting time, you know, if people are fucking around, you know, it's 10, 15 minutes between sets. You're getting pissed off because people are fucking around, taking too long, putting their wrist wraps on.
Yeah.
It's harder to simulate meet conditions if it is a longer rest period. If somebody's late, now you're all fucked up. So it wasn't all what they think it was either.
Yeah.
They use selective memory processing when they think back on some of the training sessions, you know, compared to now. And they were just as fucked up mentally as the people are today.
Right.
All right. Maybe more so. I mean, that could be debated. So what I've seen with lifters since the first gym I ever went into is they're a little, I'm off, right? So they're a little off. All right. It's kind of like the island of misfits. You know, the island of misfits and broken toys.
Yeah.
That's fucking powerlifting, right? But, you know, hopefully enough of them figure out how to get along with each other that, you know, maybe Santa picks them up. But fuck, you know, maybe they don't want to get in the sleigh. Maybe they like being part of the island of the misfits. But what's happened over the years, so I'm trying to formulate this in a way that kind of makes sense, is the number of people who were introverted, bullied, you know, picked on, you know, that kind of stuff was, I believe, my theory, a lot higher percentage than what they are now. Okay. Back then it was kind of the sport where you could go and be accepted by pretty much anybody because they were fucked up too. All right. Or, you know, they got beat when they were a kid too, or, you know, they shared a lot of the same problems without even really having to discuss them. And a lot of that came out in their physical strength because their mental strength was more of a, you know, fuck you, you know, you know what I'm saying? It's more,
yeah, like almost like a pure anger that just
kind
kind
of
shows
it needs guided.
Yeah.
You know, some of it needs guided, you know, from that standpoint. Otherwise they can self-destruct.
Yeah.
But that does become a way for them to be able to cope with their own inner demons that they have, because they can take that shit out on the bar. It's also a way for them to actually have some social interaction, which they may not have when they're outside of the gym, you know, because they're working jobs that they've creatively selected themselves into, you know, a path that has the least degree of social interaction. Yeah. You don't find a whole lot, at least back then, you don't find a whole lot of competitive powerlifters that were in team sports. Right? It just, they were wrestlers. Actually, one of the first articles I ever wrote was called Strength, and it was in Powerlifting USA, probably 97 or something like that, maybe even earlier than that. And I made a statement that most powerlifters are athletes that weren't good enough to go to the next level. You know, so probably good enough to play football, but not at the college level. You know, good enough for high school, but not good enough for the next. You know, good enough to wrestle, but not good enough to get the scholarship. And but along the way, they love training. You know, some of them, you know, this is where I would fall in, you know, were training to try to become better at a sport. I wanted to be a better wrestler, but then I fucking love training way more than I did wrestling. Right? It's just me in the bar. You know, wrestling is still an individual sport, but with a bar, it's different. You know, the work I put in is the work I'm going to get back. All right. And if I don't get the work back, I know how to learn, you know, and where I need to go to learn to find answers to be able to get better. Football, I had a really hard time with. I was okay at it, you know, not good enough to go to the next level, good enough to get letters asking me to, you know, for 3,
Yeah.
you know, but not good enough to be offered any type of scholarship, but good enough to be first or second team or whatever the hell it was. But I didn't like it. You know, I never liked it. It was a sport I was kind of pushed into playing because I could bust my fucking ass and did all the time. But if we lost, it's because these other fuckers weren't doing what they were supposed to do. All right. And that bothered me to no end because, I mean, I couldn't sleep. It's like, this is bullshit. I can't fucking deal with this. And when you're on the line and you know, you're one guy on the line busting ass, you're running hard, you're doing everything you're supposed to do, and all your other guys are going out fucking drinking 3 times a week. It's like, you know, why am I doing this? You know, so I kept powerlifting. Now in the sport, we're starting to see more and more people come into the sport through different avenues because of social media exposure. They're being exposed, you know, many different ways. CrossFit for a while was, you know, pushing people into the sport. So more people are coming into the sport that do have team backgrounds, all right, which have different mentality than the introvert. So now you got the extrovert, and then you got the introvert, and then they're in the same place training. And we're talking, when you're talking introverts, you're talking pretty strong introverts, right? Yeah. And then the extroverts, you're talking, for the most part, I don't like the word normal, but kind of normal people.
Yeah, like your average person.
But those average people are the people that these fucking people, the introverts, were like, fuck them. You know, because they were the ones fucking beating the shit out of them when they were in elementary school. They were the ones in the fucking fraternities giving the other people all kinds of fucking shit. They were the ones that were the fucking bullies. Now you're going to come on my fucking turf and act like you know what the fuck you're doing? You know, so that's kind of where I think some of the conflicting personalities start to bubble up in the sport now, you know, and which is all on the exterior. Okay, now I think you can see how I was a semester away from being a sociology major, right? Yeah. Because I've not yet answered the question, which is a psychology question, which is an internal question. But I think you have to know the external circumstances before you can look at what the internal, you know, because it plays into that.
Right. Okay,
so yes, some will use it as coping, which it's okay. I did for years and years, and I probably do so now. But the older I got, and the more I started to realize I can't. You know, I have to find something else to be able to use for coping because I can't always get in the gym. You know, if people say I use the gym to take out my frustrations and all that other stuff, well, what if you're frustrated at 10:30 at night, you know, and you're already home? Are you going to go back to the fucking gym, or are you going to do push-ups? What the fuck are you going to do?
Right.
You're just going to fucking freak out until 2 days from now when you got to squat again? You know, and some people will say, yeah, and then they'll sit there and they'll let that shit brew, which is counterproductive because that's going to just increase their cortisol. It's going to make it harder for them to recover. It's not going to work, you know. So there has to be better coping skills other than just the gym. You know, it's exercise in its nature alone is a way to help manage and deal with stress, but by no means should it be the only way to manage and deal with stress. And the younger lifters I don't know how to answer this without sounding like a fucking dickhead, so I'm just going to put it out there. Because there's two sides to it. You know, I'm really big on looking at both ends of the coin. So if I have a bias, I want to be able to argue in my own head. Yeah. Okay, so I want to say the younger lifters haven't been through enough adversity, you know, to even know how to handle adversity. So they're getting upset about some of the dumbest shit. All right, so when I was, you know, your age, and let's say you pull a bicep or whatever, to me it was fucking whatever. Just leave it alone. Let's fucking go train. You know, and just leave it detached and just go fucking do what you got to do. Or, I mean, that's kind of a bad example because that's like a surgical thing. That shows my fucked up mentality. But let's say it's a bad workout. Like, I'm going to be pissed off about it. All right, I'll be pissed off about it for a day, you know, maybe two. You might be thinking about wanting to quit the sport, getting depressed. I'm getting mad. Like, I need to get the fuck back in there and fix this now. you know, where on the other side, it's like, oh, maybe this isn't for me. You know, maybe this isn't what I should do. And so I can look at that as a 50-year-old guy and say, well, fuck, they just haven't been through enough adversity. All right. Or that's the A side, right?
Yeah.
My B side is like, well, you did the same shit. You just hit it better. At least now they're talking about it, where you just shut the fuck up and didn't say anything.
Right.
So which is really better? You know, actually talking about it and getting that stress out, or letting it, you see my point?
Yeah.
So it's a hard question, you know, to navigate. That it all comes down to if you're coaching the person, and that's, if I'll go two routes. If you're coaching the person, you need to know what their baseline is. What's their normal? Okay, if their normal is like certain people that I personally know, their normal is flapping their hands around and going into little rants every now and again. She didn't hear me. Then you got to understand that's their normal.
Yeah.
You know, that's what they do. So if you come in and you don't see that at all, it's like, oh fuck, something's off. You know, maybe it's worth looking into, you know, to see, you know, something off. Because as a coach, you want them to be at their optimal, at least within their optimal range. All right. Now, if it's somebody that's normally really, really quiet, and then all of a sudden they're being, you know, loud, obnoxious, something's off, you know. Or it could go as low as just nonverbal. You know, how are they holding their shoulders? How are they holding their head? You know, and kind of address it that way. As a coach, you need to be very observant, and it's not that difficult. You know, you don't need to go buy books on how to read micro expressions.
Right.
You just need to fucking pay attention to the people in your gym a little bit more than you do to see what their normal baseline is. And then when you know that, you certainly know if it's different. And if it's different, you can inquire about it in very polite ways that aren't destructive, you know,
Right.
or insulting, to be able to find out if they're okay. You know, because maybe they're not. You know, maybe they're hiding an injury. You know, maybe there's something that you want to get them out. Now, at a personal level, with, you know, as the individual having to navigate themselves, you have to understand and try to control your own self-talk. You know, as I talked before about false narrative,
Yeah.
you have to understand and listen to what you're saying to yourself. Because a lot of the times it's bad, you know, a lot of times. And find a way to stop it, okay? Because it's like a hot tub. I used an example of that the other night. If you're in a hot tub and you press the button, the jets are all fucking blowing, right? You can't really see what the problem is until the jets stop and the water's calm. Then you can look down and say, oh shit, look, the bottom of this thing's dirty as fuck. There's a whole ring, you know, around the top of the tub. This thing's needs cleaned. It needs drained.
Yeah.
You know, but you don't know that while it's still bubbling and spinning and all the other kind of stuff. So you have to get it to stop, right? So how somebody gets it to stop is going to be different. You know, what I learned in junior high school was just to, if my narrative's fucked, I actually will stand up and I'll take a step back. So I use my physical body to tell my mental body stop.
Like you'll take a physical step back.
Yes.
Like, okay.
Yes. So
Yeah.
I'll stand up, step back. It's like, okay, stand up, address it, step back, stop. All right. Now, what is this? Why am I fucking saying this? Okay. At least I stopped it. And then if it comes again, you know, as J.M. Blakely, I did a podcast with him, and he was, during meditation, you just let the thoughts come and go. We're not talking about meditation here. We're talking about just normal, everyday life. You know what I'm saying? Now, obviously, if you're driving, don't stop in the middle of the road. Fucking
Right.
get
Yeah.
out. But that's a tricky one, though, because a lot of your thoughts come. A lot of your best thoughts come, you know, if you're driving, you know, and that's why I'm not a big fan of audiobooks. Sorry, guys. audiobooks put your thought into some, you're letting somebody else's thoughts educate you, which is great because you're being educated. But where are your thoughts?
Yeah.
When
that doesn't really give you any time to be alone in your thoughts.
Yeah. If you got music on in there and it's not to fire you up, to get you all jacked up, it's Disturbed, AC/DC, classic fucking training music, hit your head against the steering wheel. If it's not that, then you want to let your mind roll, so for that, it's just, I just shake my head. I mean, anybody can figure, just find a way to get it to stop, and then ask yourself, is this necessary? And if it's not, then think about something totally fucking different. Like what was the last movie I watched? Right? I don't fucking know. I would have to, in this conversation right now, I'd have to fucking stop and really think. Yeah. Because I don't know. All right. What am I doing when I'm doing that? I'm trying to think of what the last movie I saw was. That's not negative behavior. If I was to continue telling myself that I suck at this or I suck at that, or I need to do this or I need to be better at this and all the other kind of stuff, that's negative. So if I had to choose between the two, I'm going to take trying to figure out what the fuck I watched, last time, to use it as a break. And then it's like, okay, now let's move forward in a more positive direction. It takes a little discipline, but anything does. So the mentality of the lifter is different because there's more. It's a different conglomerate of people, right? Which I think can all learn from each other. Like I think and I'm categorizing people very, very heavily here, which is incorrect. Not because people are not this simple to classify. Right. But the introverts can learn a lot from the extroverts. They can learn how to be a little more social. They can, I'm one of the worst fucking people, when it comes to being social in normal everyday situations or smiling. I got a fuck you face 24/7. I can learn a lot from the extrovert that's always smiling and all that kind of stuff. They can learn a lot from the introvert as far as how to get in their own head, to be able to lift bigger shit. Because a lot of the reason why they're so good at lifting heavier shit is because they've learned how to, put the harness around that fucking demon's neck and ride that son of a bitch. Yeah. So that's something that, there's a lot to be learned from putting people of different, backgrounds together and letting them, kind of grow, with each other. And the weight room is a great place to do that because as people get stronger, that's a way of growth. So they're growing together, even if, you see what I'm saying, physically, which they'll also grow together mentally. So I think it kind of takes care of that. The ones that become dependent upon training, that's a problem. That's something that they need to spend a little bit more time and really think about why they're doing what they do. And then I just leave that there because they'll have to, sooner or later, they're going to have to deal with it. And it's going to be when a doctor says you can no longer do it, or when they can't perform at a level that they want to perform at. They're going to have to do it. Yeah. So the best advice I have to them is always be working on a skill set. I saw a podcast with Kobe. God, what was the podcast? David Patrick something with Kobe Bryant. And he was talking about his retirement. I mean, you're talking a dude that played 20 years, for the Lakers, and then he retires, and everybody's like, man, you're going to go through. It's a great video to watch. It's an interview. You're going to go through all the stages of grief. Same shit I would tell any of my lifter friends that have been doing this for a long time. Yeah. It's like, man, you're going to fucking hate the sport. You're not going to be, you're going to deny it first. Like you're going to compete for like 5 years more than you should. Your knee's going to be fucked. Your shoulder's fucked. You're never going to break a total, but that's normal. It's all part of it. And then when you finally do get away from it, you're going to fucking hate everybody. You're going to hate everybody associated with the sport. You're never going to go to a meet. Then you're finally going to, it's like the stages of grief, right? Yeah. And I prepare people for that. And he didn't like have any of it. He's like, everybody was telling him, hey, look, you're going to go through this, you're going to go through that. And it's funny to watch his response, because he's like, you know, I get so sick and tired of hearing people tell me this, that I just started saying, yeah, okay. Yeah. Yeah, I get it. But the reason why he never went through that is because he was really looking forward to going on to what he's doing now, which he's won an Academy Award for, I believe, or an Emmy for, which is storytelling, you know, and really, really wanted to get into that. So it's like, okay, this is, and he actually says in the interview, the next 20 years will be better than my last 20. Think about that. Who the fuck we're crazy, talking about? You know what I'm saying? And that's what he demonstrated.
Yeah.
That's what he demonstrated during that interview. All right. I also know that people can be great players, you know what I'm saying, and great actors. And is that true? Is it not true? I don't fucking know, you know, but that's what he presented. And to me, it was really cool, because I think that with a lot of lifters, they will put everything on the backs. I do believe to be the best at anything, you got to be willing to put it number one. And I also do believe a lot of people don't know what that really entails. All right, it entails a lot more than what people think. But that doesn't mean there can't be a number two. Like, you can still be working on your education while you're trying to build yourself into somebody who may be able to break a world record someday. It doesn't mean everything else goes on fucking pause and all you do is sell online training programs, or in my day, bounce. You know, all you do is what you have to do to pay the minimum bills to be able to do the sport that you like. Because when you do that and it's over, there's nothing there. If you're building that second layer, it can be as slow as you want it to be. Mine was fucking intentionally, because I wanted to keep competing.
Yeah.
You know, but when it came time that I had to move on, it's like, okay, now, and I was already in business for 5 years or so. Now let's see what we can do with this thing. You know, now let's see, you know, I had a caveat. So I need to see what I can do with this thing, but I can't go in 100% like I did the other one, because I won't have a life. You know, so that's what I'm saying. People don't understand the degree, you know, of what that really has to entail. But if that also means that I'm getting my ass kicked in business by people who are willing to go in 100%, full fucking go, no matter what. And I can't bitch and complain about it, because I made the choice to not do that, because I know what it's like to do that. I've done it, and I think everybody should do it with something, at least for a few years in their life, so they know, because it's another world, you know, when everything you do is for one thing. I hope that answered the question. But the mental health, I mean, to really get to the mental health, if somebody really thinks that they have a mental health issue, they have to, this bullshit about being scared to go see and talk to somebody is just bullshit. All right, pay the couple $100, pay whatever it's going to be, and go fucking talk to somebody. All right, because it's not going to get better if you don't have anybody to talk to, or you got to have a brutally honest friend, and very few people have that. You know, I had it for 20 years of my life, and it made a fucking difference, but pissed me off a lot of times too. You know, so it saved me thousands of dollars. But there's nothing wrong with going to see somebody if you need fucking help. Right. Do it. It's not a bad thing, you know. Yeah. It's a worse thing to not, you know, do it, because who knows where that can lead. You know, and that's a road you don't want to go down. If it gets too dark, you're kind of fucked. You know, one way or another, it's not going to end up good, no matter how you come out. And there's professionals that specialize in helping you. And it's not like they're going to put you on there and make you fucking look at a coin and hypnotize you and make you talk like a fucking, you know, monkey or whatever the hell it's going to be. You know, just go. It's everybody that I know that's been worth their weight in anything has had times where they have had to go seek professional help. So it's not something that people should be scared of. I think it's something that those people who have had to go speak to people should be a little more forthcoming. about saying, yes, I had to go see somebody for 6 months during this time frame, because it makes it more acceptable.
Yeah, to take it back real quick, Zach and I were talking yesterday, and he kind of explained why this is a big topic for him. So, Zach, if you don't mind kind of going into that a little bit more.
Yeah, so
Explain your experience there.
So during my freshman year of high school, I had everything pretty much invested in football, and I got a 9-month concussion from football, and I lost a lot of my memory. I got super depressed during that time because I was in a dark room for 20 hours a day. 4 hours I was at a doctor's office, and I had to wear sunglasses because light was too aggressive and stuff like that. And so for me, like that's a huge topic in terms of, like, I got to the point where I was ready to take my life because I didn't feel like I was tough enough to say anything. And so I just think that that's a really important point to understand, that, like, it's not showing a sign of weakness, it's showing a sign of strength, that
It takes more
you're
strength
willing
to go.
to go and get some help if you need it. Like, and so yeah, I mean, thankfully I didn't do something I would have regretted, and so yeah.
Yeah, and that's the take home. The only thing you did there, your learning experience from that, is you waited too long.
Yeah.
You know what
exactly.
I'm saying? Because and a lot of people get caught up in that because they think it's going to go away.
Right.
You know, it's normal for people to lay in bed depressed. I mean, that's kind of a normal thing. It's not normal for it to go on for weeks.
Right.
You know, that's where you need to fucking pull yourself out of your bed and make a phone call, you know, and go get help.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm a terrible example because even after my concussion, like, I waited until all the way down the road. And so I recently started seeing a counselor and stuff, and that's made a world of difference in just the way that I see everything. And so yeah, I mean, the rough part about the whole experience was that I was going to doctors constantly who were saying there's a good chance that this isn't going to get better. Because after 4 or 5 months of a concussion, it starts to look a little bit more bleak than it should. So yeah, so that's...
So you're wrapped up in a world of uncertainty.
Right.
Without anybody to help guide you through it.
Yeah, and especially lost because I had lost so much memory. So, like, I still don't have any memories before 6th grade. Like, they're just all gone forever. And I don't have any memories of, like, the first month of my concussion. So I remember getting hit, and then what happened after getting hit, which we don't have to get into because it's neither here nor there. And then I remember a month later being in a doctor's office and just having a migraine, basically. And so, I mean, after that, the big things that kind of got me through temporarily until I decided that I needed help were my religious views in my church, and then also lifting. And then that became track, and track became this thing that I, like, almost worshipped in terms of putting all my eggs in that basket. Made the same mistake as I did in football. And so that's...
Do you think that you were displacing it? You know, so instead of dealing with it, you're just throwing it into track?
Oh, yeah. 100%. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So now, are you worried that could be displaced going into training?
I think that now that I've actually fully recognized it, because after football, I didn't really completely recognize, and that's why the track thing happened.
Yeah.
I think I'm much better rounded as a person because I love training. It's a great time, but it's not, like you said, that can't be the only thing. I love doing the video stuff, and I love shooting weddings and doing all sorts of stuff. And that's where I feel most, I don't know, safest, I guess, is when I'm spread out and I'm doing a lot of things because I'm not dependent on one thing.
Is the word safe that you're looking for, or is the word variety?
Probably variety. I mean,
okay.
The feeling is safe, but, like, what it is variety.
Okay. Because at your age, you don't want to get totally caught up in safe.
Right, yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Because you still have a lot of growing to do and a lot of maturing to do, which means you're going to have to get outside of your comfort.
Right.
I hate saying, I'm not even going to finish the sentence because I hate it so bad, the way people talk about, you know, get outside your comfort zone crap. You know, it's get comfortable being uncomfortable. But doesn't that mean you're comfortable again?
Right.
You know, so it's just a kind stupid fucking statement.
It's a self-help.
Yeah, it's a stupid
that ends
statement.
up kind of contradicting itself.
Yeah. But if you need to find, you know, like Dorothy, you know, you need to always have home.
Yeah.
Have something that kind of serves as that home.
Right.
And it can be, the photography, it could be the training or something, anything like that. As long as you know what it is, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And then you have the other things where it's like, okay, now let's go down this path, man. Let's see what's down here.
Right.
All right. Oh, fuck, that was a mistake.
Yeah.
As long as you still have that sense of adventure and so forth, then it's good. Then you're not going to get, because you can get in the same place when there's too much certainty. There's got to be a balance between uncertainty and certainty. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And a variety and that kind of stuff. But I think we're on the same page with that.
Where like it's not like all of these various things that I'm doing are certain. Like when I came into this internship, I was not certain. And then you asked me to squat, and I was like, oh, all right, well, I guess we're here. So I kind of understand what you're saying. I think we are on the same page. And that home base definitely is my church and my religious views. And so I think that's kind of where I find my roots.
I think you go ahead, Dave.
Well, I was going to say it's, the religion thing, it's a weird topic, where it's, for many, it's religion, it's church, but it's really values, right? Is what it comes back to, as a set of values. It is your religious belief. I'm not downplaying that by any means. I'm a Christian myself, so I know exactly. But it's the values that come with that that are the determining factor, because I'm sure we both know a lot of people, that are very, very stout, great Christians that are pieces of shit.
Right.
So it's, I like to always kind of dial that back to, what are the virtues, what are the values, and, that's what makes the person, not really so much as, the jar you're throwing a dollar bill into.
Well, my big misunderstanding growing up was that I always thought that church was like showing up on Sunday and being a good person. And then now the more that I've kind of grown in my relationship, it's become Christianity is a relationship for me. It's a relationship between me and God, me and Jesus, that thing. And that's what matters at the end of the day, because we can sit here and talk about, well, this person did that, this person did this, but you don't know their heart. You don't know if it was an honest mistake, et cetera. And so I think that's where I've grown more than like I think that I should have, because of things like the concussion and certain things that my family's gone through health-wise.
Josh, what were you going to say?
I was just going to say, if you guys want to go, I think you touched on it a little bit, but if you want to go back into the topic of him, how that whole thing came to be of him squatting instead of filming, because it was his first day on the internship. Did you guys explain that at all in the beginning?
A little bit. I think I asked him if he trained, and he said that he'd been training for the last year or something like that.
Yeah, nothing crazy, just like kind of just to stay moving. I haven't really had any motivated goals ever since I stopped throwing, so like it's...
Yeah, so I kind of took it as, okay, so he's been training, so there's a pretty good possibility that I can at least work him up to a perceived max to... He's going to be here for 3 months. So if he's going to be here for 3 months, as an intern, in my opinion, if you're going to be here as an intern for 3 months and you don't train, that's kind of a fucking stupid mistake. Because while the stuff that happens in the weight room isn't necessarily going to be, serve your internship very well for marketing, the people out here, know marketing, know business, and know this industry very well, but also know strength and conditioning very, very well. So it's a bonus to take advantage of. So the first thing I realized was you have a base of training. Then you mentioned something about the track and field, and it's like, okay, there's two things that are working towards something that's starting to create an idea in my head.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, let's, and then it was, you're thick throughout your chest to your upper back. When your upper back is thick, then you've done serious training at some point in your life. you know, if they're, I like to call it like a gap between their shoulder blades. You know, it's, say you have somebody that's got, you know, a big giant gap between their teeth, you know, the huge gap, like in the shoulder blades, you'll see people and you'll see the shoulder blades and you'll say, I can put my whole hand between their shoulder blades because there's nothing fucking there.
Yeah.
All right. When there's muscle there, there's a background of strength. And from what I've seen, that shit don't ever go away. You know, as I'm looking at like 70-year-old dudes that were ex-strongmen, you know, I don't know, the one guy was 50-some years old who was training out here for a little while. He still had it. You know, it's like, oh my God, you know, it never goes away. But that supports weight, right? So it's like, now I got 3 things where I think we can work this kid up and see where his max is for sure without hurting him. Right. So the first thing is I can't do this if there's a chance of injury that is at all.
Yeah.
You know, because what a shitty day to start an internship.
Yeah, that'd be a rough first day.
Tearing a fucking hamstring or
Yeah.
something. And so from that standpoint, it was looking at the squat technique and seeing, how much technique work needs to be done? And it was okay. You know, it wasn't great. You know, you got room to go on that. But it was good enough to at least make some slight corrections to be able to work up to get an idea of what your real max is. And I think we got close to it, but it's still perceived. You know, you are stronger than what you did, but you don't know how to display the strength yet.
Gotcha.
Your technique,
Like you're talking about the jumping, there is that strength there. It's just how to.
Yes, your technique is not there to display the strength that you have. So that's where it's like, okay, you know, they can figure out what they're going to do with the content from it. I'm just like, to me, I like to take people and see what I can do, you know, in a short period of time, especially when there's technical weak points and physical weak points where your lower back popped up. Usually I can't find both in one person at one time. They got to be like at a certain strength level where you're at, which is usually they're over it. So during a seminar, say if you were at a higher strength level, I couldn't work you up heavy enough to be able to find the muscular weak point because it would take too long for a seminar. Whereas it kind of was the best of both worlds from that standpoint. So from a training standpoint, it's simple. And it's where your time here basically ends is right about the same time. That's why I add how long is the internship, because we have people doing meets in December. Well, now it's like, oh shit, look at this slide right in here, you know, right with everybody else and peek it out, see what comes from it, you know. And of course these guys are like, oh, content, you know, we can jump all over this and see what, and then it became a conversation like, fuck, we brought the guy out here to film the content. You know, now he's going to be part of the content, but we already have that figured out, so that's not going to be an issue, because you still need more technical work before I can throw you right into the mix with all that. So you'll be training after everybody else, but I'm not going to make predictions because I don't do shit like that. But your strength will be a lot higher than what you think it can be, you know, before the end of it. But I still need a more complete health history, you know. I did a very general, basic health history. So yes, it was done for any of those asking. It was just not as specific as I would do if I was actually writing a program. It was specific enough to be able to do a box squat max. Yeah. That's all I needed to know. You know, now, you know, based upon this conversation, there's a lot of other questions and things that I need to know, medications and stuff like that can play a role into recovery and things of that sort to go from there. So it'll be an interesting ride. I think it will make your internship a little bit more enjoyable. You'll learn, but also be able to get stronger. And it helps the lifters that I have out here, because I have lifters at multiple stages. So I mentor 1 or 2 at a time. So they need people to teach to be able to be, you know, to really learn, right? You have to be taught, but you also have to teach. Right. Okay. And that doesn't work really well on an online environment. Yeah. You know, because you got a bunch of people teaching that, you know, shouldn't be teaching, but they don't have any feedback because there's nobody right there watching to see what they're actually teaching from that standpoint. So it works out for the best for everybody. Is that what you were looking for?
Yeah. Yep. So if you want to go back to your questions, there's that.
Yeah. So I think you've brought this up in previous podcasts before, but just what your thoughts are on like the human capacity, and are we even close in terms of strength, and powerlifting? Let's just say raw because it's like the popular thing right now. Are we close, or is there any way of telling if we're anywhere close to the capacity of what a human can do?
I don't think that we've exceeded it. You know, there's obviously we haven't exceeded it. I don't know where that ceiling's going to be, because every time you think that there is one, somebody breaks through it. And the lifts that were done in multiply were higher than the lifts that were done raw, which of course, right? The multiply helps you lift more weight.
Yeah.
But the multiply does not stabilize the joints at the lockout, right? So their spine was not collapsing with 1,300 pounds standing at the top, right? You know, it does stabilize their hips at the bottom in a squat suit. You know, the knee wraps are still being used. So I think, you know, there's still a ways to go. I think that there's also, I mean, 700-pound raw benches are fucking ridiculous. I mean, that's ridiculously strong.
Yeah.
And there was maybe one or two for 20-some years or whatever it was. And now there's, just in the past, I'd have to look up the numbers, the past 5 years, 3 or 4. You know, so, you know, the numbers are just going to keep going up, because that's how world records work.
Yeah.
You know, the thing with powerlifting throughout the ages is it pivots a lot for a sport. Like swimming's pivoted. You know, you've seen decreases in swimming times because of, you know, the flip, right? You know, then you see it because of the swimming suit. And these are significant decreases in time. You've seen the track and field, you know, as far as spikes and the turf, that, you know, are they really faster today than what they were, you know, when the 4-minute mile was broke, or when, you know, Jesse Owens broke with the 10-second 100, whatever it was for that. You know, I'm not a student of track and field, but I know that when you start taking a lot of the variables away, you know, start adding up, there's still a difference. They're still faster, but they're not as fast or
as it seems
because of all the other stuff. Where powerlifting's gone, that it's gone up and down, right? So I mean, it started raw, then it went from raw really fucking fast, you know, to ace bandages and tennis balls behind the knees, and then they went into supportive singlet, which were basically single ply suits, and then, you know, stayed in single ply or multiply gear all the way until around 2012. There might have been some raw meets and maybe one raw federation, but they didn't have any. Maybe at best 2% of the population, you know, the powerlifting population was raw. And now, you know, we're looking at, from, let's just say, less than a decade later, you know, multiply makes up 1.75% of the total number of powerlifters. You know, single ply might add another 1%. So less than 3% of all lifters are wearing gear. So it's regressed from that standpoint, you know, the progression of, you know, gear and stuff like that. Now, that's not taken into account, though, that, you know, the earlier raw records were done with 45-pound bars that were whipping all over the place.
Right.
They were done with squat stands. You know, I came in 82, and I remember squatting out of squat stands that were built out of tires. So you didn't have to just walk the weight back. You had to take like 5 steps back just before you could move your stance out because the tire was in the way. Where now with the jack stands that they have, you barely have to walk it out. With the federations, you have to walk out.
Right.
I wouldn't even call it a walkout. Compared to what it used to be, it's not even fucking close. So then you got to ask yourself, could those guys from the 70s, given the same squat racks with the same... Bill Kazmaier had to squeeze his big fucking ass into a regular 45-pound bar.
Yeah.
He's a big dude. And he was a big fucking dude back then. What could he have done given 4 more inches each side with a squat bar that doesn't whip? Fuck. 100 more pounds. I mean, who's to say? So all those guys could have lifted, more as well. So I guess what I'm getting at is records are still going to be broken, but powerlifting kind of has always fucked itself a little bit. This is the curtain, right?
Yeah.
This is looking behind the curtain, because slowly what we're going to see happening is people are already starting to get carryovers out of knee sleeves because they're making stronger and stronger knee sleeves, and they're wearing them super, super tight. So, you can ask some people, how much do you get out of your knee sleeves? And they'll tell you, maybe 15, 20 pounds. Well, that's still 15 or 20 pounds. Then you're going to have other people are going to say, I don't get anything out of my knee sleeves. But then you'll say, well, then why do you wear them? Well, because if I don't wear them, my knees hurt too bad. So what you're telling me is you get 700 pounds out of your knee sleeves. Yeah, so you
get all of it out.
Yeah, because you get all of it.
Right.
Because without them, you can't even squat. And then, so I think slowly we're going to start to see single ply kind of make its way in, or actually we're going to see raw start to become thicker suits. We're going to see supportive singlets come back into play, like they did years ago. And the wraps are already way better than the ace bandages and the crap, and the stuff even that I had to use back then. So I don't think it's going to make its way all the way back, and multiply. Here's the other fact that a lot of people overlook. Multiply never made up the majority of lifters. At most, it might have been 15-20%, at most, and that's being generous. Single ply did, because single ply was the USAPL. It was most of the other federations. They were the biggest federations, so the smaller federations were the multiply, but that's here nor there. But I don't think that we're going to see the raw game. I do think we're going to see it move into more supportive gear, all right, singlets and stuff like that. But I don't think it's going to become so supportive that it's multiply.
Gotcha.
I don't think multiply is going to die, right? Even though it is under 1,000 lifters, it's very, very, very small. I don't think it's going to die because too many people fucking love it, and then people get beat up. And they still love it. And we go back to, why are people in the sport, right? Some people are in the sport for other reasons outside of just being in the sport.
Yeah.
So they're going to find a way, to keep doing what they love to do, even if it means they got to put this on or put this on or put this on.
Those 1,000 lifters are extremely passionate about it.
They've been in the sport way longer. And the sport right now, and I watch the numbers pretty close, and probably closer than I should, because it is a small niche. It is a small target market from a business standpoint. And there's right around, I'd say anywhere between 60 to 80,000 total competitive powerlifters. Now, when you take that off of, say we have 1 million unique readers, on the website, that's, it's a nice percentage, but we're not getting everybody who's powerlifters to read the site. I'd be a fool to think so. I'd be a fool to think that we're even getting 20% market penetration in that. Most of it's strength and conditioning coaches is where the biggest percentage of our market is. But in powerlifting, though, that number's not, it hasn't been moving up very well, because there's a hole. I like to say there's a hole in the bucket.
Yeah.
People are coming and going way too fast. All right. They're not sticking. All right. Some of that can be justified because there's not a big cost of entry into the sport. So you can just pay and I need to explain this because there's entry fees, so
Right.
people are not going to get what I'm saying. Going back to the P&L thing we talked about earlier.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
All right. So the entry fee might be, you know, $100, and then maybe they buy, you know, a belt. You know, if they're going to go all in, they're going to buy a couple $100 shoes, a belt for $100, you know, knee wraps for $50, $60. So they might be, if they're all in, maybe $400, $500, maybe a little bit more. I'd have to write it all out.
Yeah.
I really don't care to do that. Where if it's multiply, you know, a squat suit can be $400. You know, so
Right.
a bench shirt's another $400. Deadlift suit's another $300. So now you're looking at, when we were sponsoring people, and we do still sponsor people with multiply, but we're not bringing any new ones in because there's no new ones really coming in. And but just the cost to get them outfitted is close to $2,000 our cost, because we're not making the shit. You know, we're an exclusive supplier for metal. So that's, if somebody has to pay that, you know, to be a part of a sport, it's, you know, you can't go rent gear.
Right.
Like golf, you can go rent clubs and play for the day.
Yeah.
You know, you can't go rent multiply and go play multiply. You know, it's a fucking commitment. So when people got into it years ago, when they had to buy the gear, it's like, well, fuck, I'm already like $1,000 into this, single ply or multiply. They're not going to do one meet and quit.
Right.
You know, but it was also a barrier. Okay, so now that barrier is removed, and you can use your buddy's belt. You know what I'm saying? You can borrow knee wraps. You can wear Chuck Taylors. You can do a meet for just the entry fee. You know, and so that barrier, that cost of entry is so low that now we get people that do, I call them laser tag lifters. They'll do one meet and they'll be out.
Yeah.
And that's okay, because they're doing it, they find out they don't like it, and then they leave. But my only wish is, I do think that a lot of people do just do the one meet and leave, and they don't train for it. I don't think you really get a true understanding of the process or the sport unless you put a good 8 to 10 weeks in actually training for it, you know, and having to deal with some of the mental tap dances that you have to do with. Like, oh shit, I had a bad day. Fuck, my meet's in 7 weeks. I can't have a bad day, but I had a bad day. Maybe I need to pull out of the meet. No, you can't pull out of the meet. You know, just the same thing as when you were, you know, playing. You know, there's certain actually no, because when you're playing for a team, there's certain expectations that you're going to be there. You're going to be ready. When there's no expectations except your own, you know, there's a lot of mind games.
Yeah. You're the one keeping yourself accountable for that.
Yeah, that go on, that, you know, people who just train the power lifts for fun don't have to play that mental tap dance. They don't have a set date. I don't anymore. You know, I don't compete anymore. So there's certain things that I want to do in the gym. There's certain objectives that I have that I want to hit, preferably before the end of the year. But if I have to move it, I'll move it, because I don't have to have an end date.
Right.
You know, so I don't have to. Now, if it's a certain day I have to do it by, then all of a sudden things change. And it's like, oh shit, I need to make sure everything's on point. I need to make sure that I'm getting the calories in that I need to get in. I need to quit eating fucking chips at night. I need to quit. You know, there's certain things I have to change to be able to make sure it all comes together. Where I think people miss that, and it becomes, when they don't train for it and they don't go through that, it becomes like you and I've never played laser tag. I don't know if you ever have. Or not. Okay, so you have. All right, so you're like, hey, let's go play laser tag. So you take me to play laser tag. And I'm like, all right, whatever, this is fine. And you're in a league. Like, you're like, man, you fucker. You know, he held me up this whole thing. You know, you're like frustrated, like you're trying to get through it, but you know how to get through it in a competitive way because you're in a league or whatever it is. Right. I'm just out there fucking around, like, you know, I'm shooting shit all over. I'm shooting people I shouldn't shoot in the back of the head because it's funny. Yeah. You know, and you're like, you know, and so laser tag lifters, because I'm sure the majority of the people that make up the income for a laser tag facility are dumb fucks like me that just kind of stumble in there and it's like, yeah, let's rent some of this shit and see what happens.
Yeah. And that's the only way I've ever played laser tag, is just stumbling in and playing. Yeah. And so I guess what I think that you're trying to say is that low barrier to entry helps, but it's also a detriment in a way.
It drives more people out faster. But that comes with having a low barrier.
Right.
You know, so it's, while I can say there's holes in the bucket, they're gonna be there. You know, and the only way that you can close those holes in the bucket is to take better care of, just like a business. You got to treat it like a business. If you get a new customer that comes into your business, how are they being treated? Do you understand the lifetime value of this customer? You know, do the meet directors understand the lifetime value of a lifter that's lifting for the first time? Because maybe they just do the one meet and leave, which is that $100 lifetime value for that meet director, or maybe they do a bang up job and make sure that the person loves the meet, has a good experience, even if they have a shitty meet. And then this person does their meet twice a year, every year for the next 10 years.
Yeah.
You know, now, you know, see, I don't think they think that far. You know, they don't think like, and they certainly don't think that way from a local level to a state level to the national level as a full federation trying to build the federation. They just don't give a fuck. They just, it's the amount of lifters that they get through the door for the meet. But again, that's that curtain that I try to keep the lifters away from.
Right.
Because it's still, you know, in Hoosier, you ever see the movie Hoosiers?
Yeah.
All right. They go to the big court and he explains, you know, go measure, go measure, go measure. It's the same fucking
thing.
basketball court, right? So it's the same thing. It's just, they gotta keep in mind that it's the same thing that they're doing in the gym. It's the same platform, same bench, you know, same stuff. But if they didn't spend time training for it, they don't know it. And then they think that is powerlifting, where that's not. That's a powerlifting competition. That's not powerlifting. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I guess you could equate it to going out and playing football after Thanksgiving, you know, a bunch of, you know, people have never played football before.
Yeah.
Compared to you're on a team and you're playing for the state championships and everything starts during 2 days and your fucking forehead is killing you because of the helmet digging into it. They don't know what the fucking helmet digging into the forehead feels like.
Right, yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You know, they don't know what it feels like to be so goddamn hot and then layers of shit that you have to overhydrate and that's still not enough.
Yeah.
You know, that your arms are slipping on your, you know, they're slipping on your pads because you're so fucking wet. You know, but those, when you look back, those are the things you think about. You don't think so much about the games. Now you had a concussion, so you probably don't remember most of it. So
yeah,
it's probably
but I mean, in terms of track, you know, I remember thinking about like those times that I would go out and I would throw after a meet because I was frustrated, and I would go back and I'd throw for like 3 hours or something, and then that next meet I'd suddenly do better because I put in that time.
Yeah.
And so that part of it, and those many hours during the summer where nobody else is going out and throwing and practicing, I'm out there. That's just as much a part of track and field as the competition.
Yes, more so. I think more so because it's a self-accountability.
Yeah.
What else you got down there?
So going off, you kind of touched on it, but the evolution of equipment, I think, especially like the actual bench squat, that like the racks, the monolift, stuff like that. How has that affected the safety? And I'd imagine that you've seen some of that throughout the years.
Well, I think it's affected the safety. I mean, going way back, and you'll see some of the older magazines in the office. I mean, man, the benches, oh my God, they'd wobble. I mean, they were like, you know, for the older guys, they're like the old weeder benches that you basically would buy in a box. The uprights are right by your head. You know, I remember benching on benches like that. And I'm not that old. I mean, there's still 2 generations of lifters that came before me.
Right.
And they had to lift with that shit. So the actual equipment has gotten better. The equipment's helped the lifters as far as, you know, I've seen squat bars evolve from the basic 45-pound bar. And different federations have different rules. So USAPL is still a 45-pound squat bar no matter what. But they're still made better than what they were 25, 30 years ago. Where in the geared federations, well, the bars had to get bigger because the weights couldn't fit on the bars anymore. You know, so a regular squat bar would start whipping, or a regular power bar would start whipping around 700 pounds. And then came the Texas squat bar, which was a little bit beefier, and the whipping really didn't start maybe 800 pounds, about 100 pounds more, and then they started to run out of room. You know, you couldn't fit the collars and shit on there. So then it came, you know, bars like a Bulldog bar, Mastodon bar, Iron Wolf bar. There were a few different variations of the bars, which are even heavier bars, which are freaking logs. I mean, they're almost like fat bars, where the shit ain't whipping with anything. You know, and I think that in Raw, you're going to see, you know, now they're using the Texas squat bar. I think we're going to see soon, because there's more lifters closing in on 900 and 1,000, which they're going to start missing lifts because the bar's whipping around. They're going to start embracing the use of some of the bigger bars to alleviate that, because it's a shitty reason to miss a lift, because the bar, you know, structurally is, you know, can't handle that.
Yeah.
So the bars are in the Texas deadlift bar, or it was an Okie deadlift bar, then a Texas deadlift bar, and I believe there's an Ohio deadlift. I don't know if I think there's an Ohio deadlift bar. So there's 3 on the market now. The original Okie deadlift bar was a fucking game changer, because that allowed the bar to bend, because it's made to bend. It's made to pull slack out of it. So now, if you're using enough weight, that bar might actually be bent 2 to 3 inches before the plates come off the floor. So now you're getting to almost a rack pull, you know. So as long as you're used to it, because there's a whip that comes with it too.
Right.
So it can work against you if you don't know how to use, you know, if you're not used to the bar. You know, you need to pull slower and stuff like that. Those made a difference. Not a huge difference, but probably in the deadlift it made a difference in the deadlift. There's no doubt about that. I can't give exact pounds or percentages or anything like that, but it made a difference. And the squat, I don't know if it really made a difference so much on the strength as it did just the comfort and the ability for the people to get under it. You know, it's hard for a really big dude that, you know, dudes today are 450 pounds. You know, how the hell Brian Shaw going to fit under a regular bar? You know, there's no fucking way.
Right.
So he couldn't, you can't compete in the sport because you're too big? You know what I'm saying?
Right.
It's like fucked up. Benches have been made with face savers, you know, and spotters, which they didn't have before, which should be used. You know, a lot of times they're just taken out and thrown to the side. Monoliths, it depends upon the federation. Some federations don't allow them, some do. But either way, the squat racks are sturdier and they're stronger, which it makes it easier for the spotters to be able to rack, you know, the weight back into the rack. So the equipment has helped with the safety, just because you don't really see any equipment malfunctions, you know, where I do remember that. You know, I remember a lot of torn pecs too, because bench pads were not as wide, and they were also thinner, which places a lot of stress on the pec tendon. So it used to be a common thing, and this is before bench shirts came into play. It was like every meet somebody tore a pec. You know, it's like, holy shit, you know, it's just, when's my turn? You know, and I rarely hear of, they still happen, but I rarely hear of them. So physical equipment has made a difference. The plates have made a difference, you know, the thinner plates and stuff like that too, but not as much as the gear that the lifters were wearing. You know, that made a bigger difference, but that's out of the equation.
Right.
You know, so that came out of the equation. So they kind of flipped that back into time, and thank God they didn't flip, you know, the equipment back into time, because that's really some, you'll see when you look through some of the magazines, it's some rickety old shit, you know. So my hat's off to the guys that were lifting with a lot of that crap, but at the time they didn't know any better.
Right. You don't know that 20 years from now it's going to be this much better.
Yes, you don't know, and that's, you know, that's an aspect that I think gets lost in the conversations with the history of powerlifting, and even with specific powerlifting meets. Everybody's got to compete under the same circumstances. You know, when you were throwing, right, it was shot, right? You had to throw in the same pit or the same ring pretty much as everybody else, unless it was a
Right.
big.
Yeah, unless there was
Big
like
school,
2
there
rings
might be
going,
2 rings
something
going,
big.
right?
Yeah, you're in the same area. You're in the same.
Yeah, but I mean, it's the same shit, right? So, and if it's football, you know, you may be playing on hard grass, you may be playing on turf, you may be playing on soft grass, but the other team's got to play on it too.
Right.
You know, it's not like every time your team gets a snap, you're on turf, but when the other team gets the ball, it automatically turns to grass.
Right.
You know, it doesn't
not how
work
it
that
goes,
way.
yeah.
So if all the guys knew is what they had at that time, then that's what they utilized and that's what they knew. All the guys today, this is all they know and this is what they have to compete with. So they need to use everything to the best of their advantage and the best of their ability and not complain. If they choose not to, let's say, going back to the knee sleeves, you got people that are getting, and I doubt it, but say people are getting 50 pounds out of their knee sleeves. And again, I doubt it. So anybody makes comments hating on me, it's just a fucking example. I'd really be surprised. But if they are, well then, if you're competing against the guy, now it's your responsibility to figure out how to get fucking 50 pounds out of yours.
Right.
You know, it's not the guy's fault who's getting 50 pounds out of his.
Right.
He's still within the rules. You know, it's everybody's playing, you know, and squatting on the same platforms. You know, after every big meet, there's always bullshit, right? And I try to avoid all of it, you know, but I can guarantee there was, a friend of mine, Dan Green, had a meet this last weekend. I'm sure there's bullshit going on somewhere, you know, about the rack being fucked up or something's fucked up. You know, people are complaining, and the people who are complaining are probably the ones that didn't do real well and bombed out. You know, or the ones that did well, they're not saying shit. But the fact of the matter is they all lifted on the same shit. It's not like they changed it halfway through the meet and gave, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And that's sport. You know, that's
Right.
that's
that's
part
just
of
how
sport.
it goes. Yeah.
You know, sometimes you go to a meet, and I remember when I was competing, because it's way better now because things are more standardized, you know, where, at least I hope so, where the bench in the warm-up room may not be the exact same bench that's on the platform, but it's the same height, same width. I can remember warming up on benches and going out on the platform and feeling like I'm sitting on a floor, you know, because the bench in the warm-up room was 17 or 18 inches, 17 and a half, I think is legal. And then the one out on the platform was 15. And it's like, fuck. You know, I can't tuck now. I got to put my feet out in front. I got to adjust. But so did everybody else. So I can't, well, I did. I mean, I bitched about it, but it does me a little good.
Yeah. It's not going to help anything.
Yeah, unless they're going to change the bench, it's not
Right.
going to help a damn thing. As soon as you realize that they're not going to change anything, then fuck it. Everybody else has to deal with the same thing.
Yeah. So then just kind of moving along, so we talked about last night kind of bracing. And so I think that's a large thing that kind of gets overlooked a lot of times. For me, at least in my training history, none of my college coaches really even brought it up as even a concept. Because in throws, there's a whole thing of like whether you should be loose or whether you should be whatever. But properly bracing, why do you think that's something that a lot of times just gets overlooked, or something that like somebody might mention, but they don't really take the time to go through
in
it?
powerlifting, I think it's overemphasized.
Okay.
At this point, it's important. It's vital, right? And if you look and do a deep dive on this and search YouTube, you'll find, you know, reputable people giving explanations on how to brace, and they'll be vastly different. All right, vastly different. But then if you look at whoever they're showing, or even themselves or any of their lifters under the bar lifting, the end result is the same with all of them.
Gotcha.
Okay, so there's different ways to teach to get to the same result, right? People can debate verbal cues to death. Like, oh, you should never tell somebody to push your belly against the belt. It should be 360. Well, you know what? If it's already being taken care of on the sides and the back, but they're not pushing out in the front, and I tell them push your belly in the front, and it does what it's supposed to do, that's what I'm going to fucking do. You know, last night we had to go through 2 different cues for you to figure out what to do with your feet.
Right.
Right. The first one didn't work. The first one would be kind of my standard go-to. All right. If that doesn't work, I got to find something else. If that doesn't work, I got to find something else. If that doesn't work, I may get to something that if somebody overhears, they're going to be like, oh my God, I can't believe he said that. Well, you know what, fucker? You're not here seeing what I'm seeing. Look at the end result. Is the foot doing what the foot's supposed to do? And with the bracing, that's a huge one with this, because people will take what somebody says as their explanation and they'll take it out of context, or they won't look and think it through and realize, you know what, he's really saying exactly the same thing. It's just because you don't know the starting position. All right. So with bracing, okay, you're dealing with the hip position as a big part of that. All right. Nobody's saying, okay, this person's starting from an anterior pelvic tilt, a neutral pelvis, or a posterior pelvic tilt. Nobody says that.
Right.
They just say, here's what you do. All right, well, what is the person preconditioned to do in the first fucking place? Because that determines what you're going to tell them to do. And so I got people I'm telling, you know, arch, kick your ass out, because that's what works. But meanwhile, if you look at them, their spine's in a neutral position. That's what they have to do because they're naturally in a forward pelvic tilt. You know, so they're, you know what I'm saying? That's called coaching, by the way.
Right. Yeah.
You know, it's the art of coaching is how do you get through to the athlete what they're supposed to do in a way that they understand. Now, where it can get convoluted is when that athlete then takes that cue, not fully understanding what it's doing, and then tells somebody else to do it. Because then it's not specific to them. Okay. And that's where things can get a little screwed up, where I like to take the time and explain it. Okay. So here's what we're trying to do. And it takes a little longer on the front end, but at least they understand this is what's going on. And there's an article on Elite FTS that was after our last seminar that I went through and wrote every cue that I used to teach the group that I was coaching. It might have been a group of 12 people. And there was like 5 or 6 cues for each group, for each thing. All right, because one wouldn't work. So I got to go to the next one. Then I got to go to the next one. You just kind of work your way down until you find the one that works. That's better than just hammering over and over and over the one that you want to work until they accidentally do it right.
Right.
Then say, good job. Then they leave and they go back and start fucking it all up again, you know, because they got to create that mental rehearsal. Now, what you're talking about, extending it out of the sport, that gets a little fuzzy, right? Because in the weight room, the athletes should be taught to be able to brace, to be able to protect the spine. But on a playing field, there's certain times they have to play loose. They can't be tight. They can't run down the field like fucking RoboCop.
Right.
You know, they have to, as cued, play loose, which doesn't necessarily mean they need to not have their brace. You know, if they're going to get drilled, you know, if they're a receiver, they're going to get drilled, they ought to know, you know, they need to, and most automatically do, you know, condition themselves for impact.
Yeah, they shouldn't be flopping around like Gumby or something.
You know, so they're naturally doing that. So that's where the controversy comes in with throwing a lot of times, because if you're spinning, which I assume most throwers are now, shot and disc is both the same. You know, you got a coach that may misunderstand that the bracing means that torso is not going to be able to move and spin at the velocity or the speed that they want to generate, you know, to put or to move the shot. And that's not necessarily the case, you know, because the force is still coming from the hips. You know, it has to transfer through the hips to the implement that's being thrown. Now, if that's a marshmallow that's in there, it's just going to get lost. It's going to look like a Twizzler. You know, it's just going to get lost and be all bound up and not transfer through.
Right.
It's just a little different, you know, and how it's going to be applied with the throws. But that's up to the technique coach. That's not up to the strength coach. It's up to the strength coach to make the athlete fucking stronger.
Mm-hmm.
Then it's up to the technique coach to be able to take that strength and apply it to the technique and skill that they're doing.
Right.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because you're going to have more people that are having issues with the spin due to back problems associated with sitting playing video games all day long and sitting in shitty chairs for classes than they're going to have because their core is loose.
Yeah.
You know, so with field coaches, because I know where you're coming from, because I know and have heard of many that tell their athletes to not train their core at all. You know, just
Yeah, and I mean, it is tough because a lot of times you don't have a strength coach and then a technician coach. It's all one person, so dividing that between the weight room and throwing it gets...
So they're creating a weak core, which it doesn't... Let's say I agree with them, all right, and I'm going to play devil's advocate. I agree with them. They don't need to have this super strong core. They have to have a core that's stable enough and strong enough to take a shit, to be able to sit in class, and to be able to play the fucking video games. Because if they don't, when they get out there, it's going to all crumble and they're going to get hurt, you know? So there's the answer there, you know? So, and if they can't transfer the strength into the skill, and then they may not be as good of a technique coach as they think they are. So that's kind of my rant on that one.
Fair enough. All right. Yeah. So then I think we're coming down to the last few questions I got here. What was like, do you have any favorite moments as like an athlete? Like as a lifter, like what was one of your like biggest highlights that you look back and you're like, yeah, that was it?
Because you played football, but I assume that your highlight would be from powerlifting.
Well, I mean, we're going way back to when I was wrestling. I was a better wrestler than I was a football player, and unfortunately kind of had a decision made for me that I would have chosen a different direction. But during the regionals or whatever it was I sucked, by the way. I sucked at all sports until I started training. Then when I started training, I just beat the fuck out of everybody because I was stronger.
Yeah.
And my work ethic, you know, was stronger because I was bullied, beat up, whatever you want to call it, you know, pretty much all my school, and put in LD classes, special ed classes. You know, I don't want to go down the whole road there, but you know, any reason somebody could be made fun of in the elementary level and, you know, junior high level, I was. So there were very few people who did not fucking pick on me, steal my lunch money, and all the other kind of bullshit that goes along with that. So I just stayed away from people. That's the way I handled that. Just stayed away from them. Well, then I had an outlet, training. I can fucking train. I like this. All right. Well, then the side effect of that, and I wasn't training to be able to intimidate people. I was training because it was an outlet. I fucking loved it. It's like, this is fucking cool. I like this. And I don't want to say you're ever forced, but my parents forced me to always be involved in some kind of sport.
Yeah.
All right. So soccer, I played soccer. I sucked at that. You know, football, I kind of sucked at that until I started training, you know, but wrestling, and I sucked at that and that's where my first introduction to just like a universal machine and body weight movements and stuff like that, and running, and it's like, fuck, I can do this stuff and I can be better, and if I do more of this than everybody else, maybe I can win. And then I started winning. Like, fuck, if I do even more, you know, then nobody's going to beat me. And then the weight training kind of came in around that same period of time, and then I just started fucking destroying people. And then the coach for the last 2 years I was involved in it did more pulling me back, because wrestling's a point game. It's a pin game or a point game.
Yeah.
All right. So I wasn't allowed to pin anybody anymore because I would do it within 15 seconds. You know, I would go out there as soon as I got a hold of them, fucking throw them down on the ground and pin them.
Yeah.
It's like, fuck you, this is over with. You're done. And I loved that. You know, and I was addicted to that, but that doesn't make you a better wrestler.
Right.
You know, so I'd have to fucking get the points, and then they come back. And, you know, so this went on for a couple of years, and then it was the regionals or whatever the end of the year thing was. It's like junior state or some shit like that. And it's for the 8th grade. So before you move into the 9th grade level. And he said, on this one, just go, just be you. And I think because I won, and they give you the little bracket chart, when you win. I think when I added up the total time that I was on the mat, it was 1:15 out of 5 matches. I mean, there were some that was like 10 seconds, 15 seconds. I mean, it was just like grab, fucking throw them, done, all the way through. So nobody knew how to counter my strength, and I just fucking hog tossed them and threw them down. That would have caught up, and so I was just using my strength, but that would have caught up as, if I would have continued to keep wrestling. I had a body weight problem. I was growing into a super heavyweight class, but I was muscular in the heavyweight division. I think was like a 220 or something like that. I can't remember back then now on what the wrestling divisions were. It was a long time ago, but the next class up was super heavyweight, and I did not want to do that. I did not want to wrestle the super heavyweight, not because I was afraid of them, just because they were gross. I had to practice with them. That was bad enough. I couldn't imagine doing that, which meant I would have had to have cut weight, which I had no problem with, but the football coach did.
Oh, yeah.
All right. So now I got this football coach saying you need to just specialize in football, wrestling coach saying you need to specialize in wrestling, and this big fucking, at that time in my life, huge drama, because my parents want one thing, I want one thing. Everybody's fucking, and I gave in, and I shouldn't have ever done that. And I regret that. And that giving in was playing football. But I got fond memories. I was a captain. I got fond memories of playing the game, but I would have rather have wrestled. But that one meet where he let me fucking go free, that was one of the things that I'll probably remember till the day I die, because I fucked people all day long. And it was in a fucking zone state that was just like, you're dead. It didn't matter who was across from me, what their record was, how good they were, you were fucking dead. And boom, gone. I never had any memory like that with football. I'm not gonna say I hated it. I have a lot of funny ass fucking memories from shit on the field. Stupid late hits that I shouldn't have done, and just dumbass crap. That you do to opposing linemen and shit like that. But nothing that's like, that was the greatest thing in the world. Powerlifting, I really don't have any lifts that stand out as, wow, that was a great lift, because the competing part was, I didn't really like the competing part. The training part was what I liked. The competing part was just kind of what I had to do.
Right.
But what I miss the most is when you're there. It's probably a little bit the same in shot. You got those people that are throwing, then you're on deck and in the hole, right? So you're probably called up, probably using the same terms.
Yep.
You're in a pit, so you're waiting for your time, and you're sitting there, and you're on the deck or on deck, and that's when they'll start rapping. So they're rapping you, and you're sitting there, and you're mentally putting yourself where you need to be. If you're over aroused, you bring yourself down. You're finding that place that you need to be in, and then you have all your shit on, your wraps are on, you can't stand up, and you fucking reach your hand up. Somebody grabs your hand, pulls you up. That fucking chalk, man, like when the fucking person grabs your hand and the chalk leaves and they pull you up, that's what I miss. Because that's like, let's fucking go.
Gotcha.
Because from there, it's like, boom, now I'm a different person. And then it's just chalkboard bar. But that I fucking miss. That can never be replicated. But that's an emotion that I can close my eyes and feel. And it's just like, man, that's the most awesome fucking part of the whole sport. It's just, it's like, fuck, it's like I want to do it now. It just never, it never goes away. It's a driving part, and it only happens in the meets. The part that I hated, but was also the part that I fucking loved the most. The part that I couldn't wait to get back to. It's like, boom, boom, get this motherfucker. And it didn't matter if it was an opener. It didn't matter what the weight was. It's just like, bam, this is what I fucking am here for. This is what I've trained for. This is what I do. And at the time, this is who the fuck I am. You know, and that was like all that validation in one fucking
one switch,
one swipe of a fucking hand.
Yeah.
You know, and that is what the fondest memory, you know, would be. You know, the rest of it's just training stuff, which, you know, there's good training memories, there's bad, you know, training's training. You know, the longer you do it, you know, when you're younger and you're training, you look forward to every training session. It's like, man, I can't wait to get back in the gym. I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this. You know, after 20 years, it's like I know every fucking exit, you know, on the way, because training at Westside, I knew every exit to fucking not go to the gym. And thought about turning on every exit every fucking time I went. But you still go because, you know, it's the discipline to do it, and it's what you do. And other people are relying on you, and there's a lot of other cofactors that are involved in that, but you just still go because the meat's still going to come and I'm still going to be there. You know, and that fucking, you know, that's still going to be there.
Yeah.
So that makes all that worth it. But, you know, it changes, you know, the longer you do something, you know, the passion's still there, and the drive is still there. It's just the excitement, maybe the energy isn't really the same. You know, you become more conservative, you know, on everything. It's like, is this necessary? Is this not necessary? So it becomes a good thing because I think it extends your career because you stop doing the things that you shouldn't do and you start doing more of the things that you should do, you know, and that kind of stuff. So.
All right. So then on the other side, the flip side, what about as a coach? Has there been any moments that you're like, yeah, that was just a great moment of either?
There's a pivotal moment.
Yeah.
I don't consider myself a coach. They'll all say differently, but I really don't. I like to mentor people. I like to show them how to coach themselves because I think that's the ultimate end, you know, for them to be able to learn how to regulate every aspect of their training. So then it's just a discussion. You know, earlier today it was, you know, Ted is 14 weeks out. Well, we've already kind of planned that he only needs to squat every other week, so he's got really 7 more sessions. So we're talking about it. Okay, so it's, you know, ultimately he's in charge of his own destiny, but I've been helping him for 15 years. If he doesn't know what the fuck he's doing, then I failed miserably. You know, he knows what he's doing. I'm not in his body. You know, I don't feel his pain. I don't feel his traps. I don't feel his elbows. I don't feel any of that. He does. All I know is here's the path that needs to get there, and it's shorter than what we think based upon the plan that we've set out. It's half of the time, you know, of what the time's still the same, but half you get the sessions because his body is only going to be able to handle so much. So what's the plan here? That's the ultimate goal, you know, with the people that I work with, is to be able to get them to that point, because then they educate me. All right. And then that kind of funnels through, because after 37 years, I still, you know, read something about training an hour every single day, at least 4 or 5 times a year. I wonder if I even have a fucking clue what I'm doing, you know, because you stumble across something and it's like, oh, fuck. You know, it changes your whole perspective. And it's like, well, should this? So there was a pivotal moment with when we moved our weight room. We've had, this is S5, so the weight room's been in 5 different places. So we had to go from S2 to S3. And that was going from, you know, a small 2,000 square foot place to a bigger place, which was in the middle of the fucking country. A place where, you know, Ted first started coming in. He was about 180 pounds maybe. There's a group of 5 of them that I had 4 or 5 former Westside guys that I was training with just on the weekends, more or less just fucking around, you know, not really training, but just a bunch of guys trying to figure out what the hell we're going to do now that we can't compete anymore. So let's just get together and train, have a good time. And so it was myself, Todd Brock, Mike Ruggiero, Kenny Patterson, and Gosh, I knew I shouldn't have named him because I was going to forget somebody that really mattered. But anyhow, I apologize to whoever it was. And we had this conversation because one of them, I forget which one, said, why don't we bring some lifters out here and start helping them? And at that point in time, I was still in this like anger phase, like, fuck that, man. I got to deal with our sponsors, and that's enough.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I don't want to deal with fucking real lifters. And, you know, I hadn't gone to a meet 2.5 years, 3 years. I'm like, I'm done with that shit. You know, fuck that. You know, I'm still angry at the sport. Mm-hmm. And so we agreed to bring them out. And it's like, okay, here's what the rules aren't going to be. You know, so we went through all the rules that we had the unwritten rules that we had to live by at Westside, and said, okay, fuck it. You know, there's not going to be any start time. It's going to be like 6:30-ish. Mm-hmm. You know, if you're here at 6:35, you're not getting thrown out. So shit like that. And so we figured all that out, brought all 5 of them, I think it was, brought them out and started working with them. And, you know, I knew this was going to kind of happen, but within 6 months or so, the guys I was training with pretty much all vanished. You know, it's just me stuck with these 6 people. Now I got to be there every Saturday, every Sunday, and I don't fucking want to be there, but I got to be there. Mm-hmm. But that's being a little harder on those guys than what I should be. They all had reasons and work and shit like that. Yeah. So it wasn't like they fucked me over or anything like that. That's the furthest thing from the truth. But their first meet, Ted, you know, he can probably tell the story better than I can because I'll fuck the weights up. But it might have been a 500 pull. It might have been a 600 pull. I don't know what it was, but none of the lifters that we were working with at the time were qualified to lift on the pro day. So they had to lift on the amateur day. Mm-hmm. And that going to that meet and watching the amateurs lift, which I hadn't done in God knows how long. 15 years, mm-hmm. You know, because I was in the nationals, the junior nationals, you know, the bigger, the meets where the stronger lifters were at, and seeing people, you know, straining with 315 on the squat and being all fucking jacked up about it. And, you know, I started to see that, wow, this is really the sport. You know, the sport isn't all the bullshit that I just got done doing a few years ago. Mm-hmm. You know, I was too far behind the curtain. This is the fucking sport. And then Ted goes out and pulls 50 pounds more than what we expected him to pull. And it was like, motherfucker, this is what this shit's about. Mm-hmm. This is why I started this shit in the first place. And it pulled me back in. So that lift kind of pulled me back in, like, okay, I want to make these fuckers strong. You know, I want to teach them what I know so they can be able to get stronger and make other people strong. And that was probably, as a coach, if you want to say that, the most pivotal thing, you know. And that's going back to even, you know, when I was at Westside, you can, as training partners, you're coaches. So we are all kind of athlete coaches. Mm-hmm. That fucking beat seeing people break all-time world records, you know, and, you know, wrapping their knees and helping them getting ready to go to the bar. This little lift, you know, by an amateur dude at the time, you know, trumped all that, because it brought me back to what the sport really was, you know, or really is, mm-hmm. You know, and not my false narrative of what I created it to be, you know, because of where I left, you know. And it makes you wonder, you know, when people retire from the NFL, you know, what do they think when they go watch a junior high game? You know, do they think, fuck, this is really football, you know, or do they just never go? You know, it's shit like this I always kind of wonder, you know, because it's that sport, you know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. You know, the sport is that entry level, that's where it's like it's different. You know, it's just a different thing. It's all around different, you know, because as you get better, it becomes more competitive. It becomes more personal, becomes more emotional. You're invested more. You're becomes your life pretty much for a lot of people. Where there, it's just like, fuck yeah, I swear, you know what I'm saying? It's just, it's like God, I don't know how to compare it. It's like innocence. You know, it's like a child at a certain age is just full of innocence. So you're like, wow, look at that. It's fucking awesome. You know, it's kind of the innocence of powerlifting. And that's what pulled me back.
Well, awesome. Yeah.
Anything else you have there? Because
No.
I got some. Do you have any that came through the live?
Just a couple went through the live. Did you say you have any more, Zach?
No, that's all I
Okay.
got.
Why don't we just do a quick rapid fire through these live ones?
Okay, because I got a couple over here I want to hit too. So hit your live ones.
All right, yeah, just do these as rapid fire real quick
Yep.
here. How often do you use the Zercher squat?
Never.
Never. Okay. Do you have any advice for someone switching over from competitive powerlifting to competitive strongman?
Find somebody that knows how to coach the events.
Okay. And then lastly here, thoughts on parallel depth box squats.
It depends if you're competing or not. If you're competing, you want to use the same box to the depth that you're going to be required to squat to. You don't want to use echo.
Sorry about that.
Okay. Yeah, you don't want to use a box that's like 3 or 4 inches higher than what you're going to be expected to squat to at the meet, nor do you want to use one that's 3 or 4 inches lower than what you're going to have to squat to at the meet. So it's better to be, a little bit deeper than what you think, but not radically deeper than what you think. So when you say parallel and you're not a competitor, I would say it's probably better to go a little bit higher than that. It depends on how you define parallel. If you're calling it rule book parallel, then I would say that's probably too deep if you're not a competitor. If you're calling it parallel based upon the actual knee and hip joint, then I would say that you're in a good place.
Okay.
All right.
Dave, if you want to continue with yours.
Yeah. These are some of the old ones going back that I don't want people to think that we completely ignore all the answers that they send me on Instagram, because we really do need those, and we really we rely on them for a lot of the podcasts that we do, especially when we have guests, because sometimes there's this really weird awkward silence, really weird awkward science. Anyhow, what makes an all-around good power lifter, besides the total, of course, attitude in and out of the gym, work ethic, how much they give back to the sport. If you're talking about what makes a good all-around power lifter, it's still going to be a total, because that is a power lifter. So they can be a terrible person outside of the sport, have terrible work ethic and everything else, and if they still end up with the highest total or however it is at the end of the day, they still won. So when you're talking power lifter, and when I read that, I'm thinking of somebody who competes, then the winner is the all-around best. Now, the other part of the question is, do the other qualities actually matter? To be the overall best, actually, I do think they do. They do matter, because what you're going to find is the longer that you're in the sport and the longer you do the sport and the higher you work yourself up the ranking, the more you start to realize that this is not just about you. There's other people it is an individual sport. It's still you under the bar. You're still responsible for lifting the weight, but it is not about you. It's about a lot of other people that go into that. And when you have that support network in place, then the training becomes less toxic. It becomes less catabolic. You're not producing cortisol because you're going to many fucking rants all the time and you're pissed off at this or you're pissed off at this. So yes, it matters, from that standpoint. Nobody fucking believes me, but it matters. Lifters having to psych themselves up with nose torque. Oh, that's a good one. Nose torque. Fuck. We sell the shit too. Okay. Nose torque is like the fucking fine wine of powerlifting now. It's ridiculous. There's like 72 different brands and different size bottles and packaging and all this other stuff. It's fucking ammonia. Here's how I look at it, and I use ammonia capsules. If you need ammonia, you already failed. If you need to crack an ammonia capsule or you have to open an ammonia bottle, it already tells me that you fucking doubt yourself. There's some doubt. So the reason why you're hitting it is to fucking put yourself into a different mental state to be able to get ready to do the lift. I'm not saying the doubt's right or wrong. All I'm saying it's there, and you're proving it's there by having to use the shit. So with that in mind, use it as infrequently as you possibly need to use it. There's been many times that I'll do my stupid shit out here and I'll have 2 ammonia capsules in my hand and I just throw them on the ground. I won't even crack them because I'm already where I need to be mentally. Now, if I'm already where I need to be, then I crack it and I knock myself out of where I need to be. That's stupid. All right. If you're never where you mentally need to be and you're hitting ammonia for everything, fucking bicep curls and shit like that, then I would question why you're even in the gym. So ask yourself why you're actually using it and then make it something that's going to be productive to your training. Not something that's just cool for an Instagram video or cool because everybody else is doing it. If you don't fucking need it, don't use it. I don't think the whole time I was in Westside we were allowed to have ammonia capsules in the gym. That's 14 years. Now at a meet, I don't think Louis gave a shit, but I don't think any of us even used them. You know, now before that, I used a ton of the shit, but that was before I kind of knew better. You know, so I would rather people spend more time working on their mental aspect, their mental game, and then trying to use that to clear their mind. It should be there. If you can't get your mind right, then you hit it to pull your mind back into place. I don't think that's what it's being used for now. I think it's being used just because it's the cool thing. And it's like, oh, try this one. It's even stronger. Does it really fucking matter if it's stronger or not? You know, to me, anyhow, fuck it. I'm done with this. And we're going to bring in 2 new brands next week. Swear to God. No. Can you talk about why powerlifters still don't believe in the conjugate method works for other people? I'm not going to talk about that. I've already over talked about that. Rant about how social media has taken its toll on powerlifting and the strongman culture. For example, touch upon how the pressure, basically the question is, you know, people that are, maybe they're doing extra sets just because of Instagram. And I remember when I was training with Meadows, he was jokingly said Instagram's the best thing that ever happened to bodybuilding because it makes you do an extra set. Where volume's a good thing, you know, from the bodybuilding perspective. But if, you know, Instagram is causing people to do an extra work set than what they normally are programmed to do, then that's not an effective tool. You know, that's not helping their powerlifting. It may be helping their Instagram. I don't know, one way or another. The only thing I do know is they don't care more about the game than they do the gram. So that's their choice. You know, I'd rather have lifters that care more about the game than they do the gram. And if they care more about the gram, that's fine. Don't come to me and ask me for all kinds of help about how to become better at the game. You know, ask somebody how to become better at posting. But it does happen. So there's no doubt that it does happen. And people get caught up in it. You know, they get caught up in that. And I'm fine with that. Just don't be part of the game. You know, make a choice. I'm not telling you not to post on Instagram. I'm telling you don't let other people decide your training decisions who you don't even fucking know. That's the most fucked up part about this. You don't even know these people. And you're posting and doing extra work sets to overtrain and to overreach and to fuck up your training program for somebody you don't even know. It might even be a fucking bot. How do you feel about that? You know, you're fucking your training up for a Russian bot. Smart move, dude. Wow, this is getting to me now. It drives me nuts It drives me nuts when people have natural talent in the gym but don't have the drive to do anything with it. Okay, I'm going to throw this back at you. Did you have natural talent to play tennis? Did you have natural talent to play football? Did you have natural talent to play squash? Did you have natural talent to play soccer? Well, why didn't you fucking do it? That's it. You can't cherry pick shit like that. All right, those are the only ones I highlighted. So we are out, guys. Thank you. And subscribe to the channel. How do you like that, Josh?
Perfect. Thanks for tuning in, guys.